All set. Thank you.
Thank you, Millie. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. This is the New Shoreham Town Council work session agenda for Wednesday, June 2nd, 2021 at 7 p.m. The New Shoreham Town Council is meeting via telecommunication pursuant to State of Rhode Island Executive Order 20-46 dated June 12th, 2020. We do not have the bandwidth to support a video link for members of the general public. So to participate or raise your hand, you can do so on your phone by pressing *9, and you can unmute and mute by pressing *6. I would ask members of the public to stay muted if you would like to have any public input, do so by raising your hand and unmute yourself when called on and state who you are when called to do so. The supporting documents for this agenda are on Clerkbase New Shoreham, or you can dial in or watch on YouTube. I'd like to thank, tonight we have members of the RIAC folks with us, along with the town council members, but I'd like to thank our wizards of webinars, Millie McGinnis and Molly Fitzpatrick, for making this all happen for us tonight. So without wasting any more time, number one on our agenda is an update from RIAC regarding the Block Island Airport parking and business planning. I see we have members of RIAC here with us, and I will turn the floor over to you, gentlemen and women.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to get things going, and thank all of you and the participants and attendees for coming out tonight. It's we're very happy to be here to give you an update on the strategic business planning process for Block Island State Airport. My name is John Goodman. I am the Assistant Vice President for Public Relations for the Rhode Island Airport Corporation. And really what the strategic business planning process is all about is it's an effort to try to help improve airports while also making them self-sustaining, and also bringing together members of the community and gaining the input to try to basically find some, I guess, agreement in the community as to what you would like the future of the airports to be. Within this planning process, we plan to later announce a 10-year plan for capital investments in Rhode Island State airports, including Block Island State Airport. So we're very happy with this process, happy with the input that we've been given to this point. And I'd also like to take a moment to introduce my co-presenters tonight. Brian Shaddle, Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, will be presenting tonight. Dennis Greco is our Senior Vice President and Chief Operations Officer. And Brittany Paglarini is Assistant Vice President of Human Resources and Internal Legal Affairs. Should there be any legal questions that come up? Hopefully not. She's be perfectly happy if that didn't happen. But if I'm able to, I'd like to share my screen and just kind of give a quick overview of where we are in the process and some of the challenges that RIAC is faced with. If that's possible, I'll try to hit my share screen button and see what happens.
Yeah, that's great. John, before you get into that, would you just give an update on the parking plan? I know that's been put off, and I don't think a lot of the members of the public, I think if we could get that off the docket before we get into this, a little more complicated.
Sure. This is really just about, 5 slides just to kind of give the context of what the challenges that we have and why we are looking at proposals such as the parking plan. So I promise this really won't be any time at all. We'll run quickly through it and just let Brian present from there. But this slide does give the overview of really what we're trying to achieve. And the parking proposal actually did come from, I think even starting back in 2017, the members of the town council and others were saying that parking is a problem for the island, not necessarily just parking at the airport, but parking is, more parking would be an asset to the community. So that's something that we took seriously and we're actively looking into. But really what we're trying to do is, again, balance all those different needs while we're looking at safety first. Safety is one of the primary issues that we're looking at, the pavement condition assessment, airspace analysis, but also the financial stability of the airport. So that is really the context in which we are looking at the parking proposal itself. We do have some challenges in terms of trying to generate income, and I'll let Brian just give a quick overview of this.
Great. Thank you, John, and members, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to join this meeting tonight. My name is Brian Chattel, as John was referring earlier, and I am the Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer for Rhode Island Airport Corporation. In terms of context, what I'd like to start off with is, I'm sure everybody's well aware of, is Rhode Island Airport Corporation is responsible for all six airports of the state of Rhode Island. Of that, we're responsible also for the 5 general aviation airports, of which one of those airports is Block Island, obviously close and dear to everybody's heart on this call. And as we're going through the strategic business plan, we wanted to share with the town council several facts and several findings that we have as we're going through here from a perspective of concept of what we're finding and trending and where a lot of this information is coming from. For us as in Rhode Island, as you'll see on this slide here, Rhode Island is one of only 3 states that does not have in place a state aviation fuel tax. That's very important to this conversation as we go through, especially some other concepts here these are charges that go through to the aviation users, the aircraft owners that operate in states across the country. In Rhode Island, the owners and operators do not have the burden of this type of state aviation fuel tax, which is not charged in Rhode Island. Again, that 47 other states have, including neighboring states, and we do benchmark as we're going through this. 2 examples would be our neighboring states in Connecticut and Massachusetts do have a state aviation fuel tax. The state aviation fuel tax, for example, in Connecticut, does directly benefit the general aviation airports and is utilized to fund not only operations, but also capital improvements across the system. We did benchmark and gathered information from 2019 for a frame of reference for everybody. And again, highlighting these facts as we're going through our general aviation strategic business plan on the challenge position here that RIAC has moving forward, existing and moving forward, and some of the key goals as we're going through this is the challenge position of not having this type of revenue stream to come through and benefit the airport system in general. And just in 2019, as a frame of reference, as you can see here, Rhode Island had 0 aviation fuel tax. Connecticut collected $7.1 million in aviation fuel tax. And again, that benefited the general aviation community. And Massachusetts had $36 million of aviation fuel tax collections that benefited communities and airports across the state. The other item that we're dealing with, a couple other ones, as far as the user fees that are established here in Rhode Island, and again, benefiting the owners and operators of aircraft in Rhode Island as compared to neighboring states. There are a couple other charges, and one of them is referred to as fuel flowage fee. Fuel flowage fees are charged on fuels per gallon. And again, these next couple of slides, again, on benchmarking and comparing across the neighboring states, really just show the difference and the savings that to the owners and operators. And again, that is reflective in less revenue streams for the operations of these general aviation airports. And as you can see here, the Rhode Island metrics on those are significantly lower than the neighboring states in Massachusetts and Connecticut. The next slide is another example, and not only on the fuel side and the fuel flowage fees and the fuel taxes, Rhode Island registered aircraft actually pay significantly less aircraft registration fees. And another benefit in the state of Rhode Island to the aircraft owners and operators is that not only do they have lower registration fees as compared to our neighboring states, also if your aircraft is registered in the state of Rhode Island, you do not have to pay landing fees at any of our airports in Rhode Island as well. So there's significant benefits that benefit the whole aviation and airport community and aircraft owner community across the state. Now, laying that out just from a frame of reference is just as we're going through our strategic business plan, these are revenue streams that are utilized by states all across the country. and specifically here in New England with our neighboring states that, that benefit and help pay for the services. Here in Rhode Island, and I'm sure you've heard through discussions through our strategic business plan planning, our aircraft owners and operators are benefiting from a subsidy to the general aviation airports system of about $2.4 million in this year's budget. And that includes all the revenue streams that we have available to us at the general, from general aviation operations, and the cost of those operations, along with debt service and related capital improvements. So as we're going through this strategic business plan, we're really looking for opportunities and dealing with those facts in the matter that we're uncovering as we go through and compare ourselves to neighboring states. So we just really wanted to have everybody have that as a frame of reference. And now, as we go into specifics, and council member, I know you were asking specifically about the parking plan. As we look at that, again, we're going through, and as John referenced, parking on the island has been discussed for a long time, several years. And as a matter of fact, through our public process here in Rhode Island, and going through the strategic business plan, we've been very transparent. So some of the discussions is, you go through and we are an entity that plans in public. So during the strategic business plan meetings, we've discussed the needs for the parking operations, the issues that we face specific to Block Island. It's not only a revenue stream perspective to deal with these subsidies to the aircraft owners and operators. It's also I know Block Island has, in general, a parking issue across the island. For us at the airport, we do have issues, logistical issues. The parking lot fills up. That we have abandoned vehicle issues, and a lot of this program is intended to have multiple factors, again, dealing with the parking issues that we have in place at the General Aviation Airport at Block Island. Also, as we're going through our strategic business plan and we benchmark against other neighboring states, and Peter Eichley, who is on the phone on the panel here as well, we hire Flight Level Aviation, who acts as our FBO and aeronautic operator at all our general aviation airports, including Block Island. And on Block Island, we, part of that charter for Flight Level is to come up with plans, and they are preparing and presenting an updated parking plan for us that we're looking. We are not implementing anything over the summer months, and we're looking to have a very well-defined, clear plan going forward from September forward. So there will be no implementation of this plan over the summer. And again, Flight Level, part of the feedback, Flight Level has been and will continue to be coordinating with stakeholders, and that will continue on a go-forward basis as well.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Happy to answer any questions as well.
Does the councilors have any questions for Brian at this point? Keith Stover?
I just have a couple. One is, who do you view as your stakeholders? Because I have some question about the first slide that popped up when John was starting, because it seems like you're viewing your constituency as the general aviation population. And for us on Block Island, and I say this, respectfully but passionately, our use of that airport is unique in that it constitutes a lifeline for the entire community. And every single one of us knows someone, most of us know multiple people who have had emergency flights, who use the airport for shuttling back and forth to essential medical appointments, who use it for things like getting prescriptions. So I would just argue that the community is a stakeholder here, perhaps in ways that it's not the case in other towns. And urge you when you're, transparency is not something you are simply because you declare you are. And I think we've had a couple of surprises over the last month that really concern me as to engage things. So thank you.
Thank you, Keith. If you would repeat your last sentence, you cut out on that. I just want to make sure your statement.
I just was saying that I think we've had a couple of things that many people in the community viewed as a surprise over the last several weeks, whether it's the way parking was rolled out or the RFP that you issued with Cushman and Wakefield. I just would like to know who the stakeholders are and how you view that. Sorry for the editorial.
No, that's okay. You cut out. That's why I asked.
I'd be happy to address that. That slide was actually meant to convey that we actually find ourselves in a tug of war quite often in terms of perceptions. If you ask the aviation community, they'll say we are way too much on the side of the community. We are, because we keep talking about the community, we respect the views of the community, and they are really the public good is what the overall constituency is. And that does take a balance. That takes obviously, leadership in the town to be involved in that as well. That's what the entire strategic business planning process has been all about. And we've had, I think, 41 meetings across the state with different constituencies. And we've actually specifically had forums just not for the aviation community, but for the public in general to get their input. Just to make sure that we're listening to all constituencies. So we've had public officials that we've spoken to. We certainly get input from the aviation community who thinks that, again, we're doing far too much in terms of swaying towards the community choice. And you can look up some of the letters to the editors that have made accusations of that nature. But we recognize that that's where we are. And as far as the neighbors of the airports are concerned, we're doing way too much for the aviation community. But what is the important point that I think you're trying to make is a sustainable airport is vital to the Block Island community. It's your lifeline. And as we're out pushing the Safe Airspace Bill at the General Assembly to make sure that we can maintain that connection between Block Island and the mainland, again, that's something where the town council can certainly weigh in. That is probably one of the most important challenges that you have to maintaining your lifeline. So, we'd encourage you to talk with Senator Sosnowski on that matter as well. But just to fully agree with you, yes, the community is the prime constituency.
Thank you, John. Sven?
Yeah, a couple of things. Thanks, John and Keith. A few things. One, on that Safe Airspace Bill, I think it was well over a year ago that we said, we'd be working on that with you guys. And I don't think a lot has progressed on the local level, at least, because we haven't sort of heard a lot about it or what to do and stepping forward. But I think that is something, unlike many other airports, where you have a lot of alignment, and we need to work it through the community. The other thing, and I have been very involved in all the discussions with RIAC, that I think is sort of at the heart of where believe Keith is going is socialization of ideas is really important, and how we socialize them. And I will take the Cushman and Wakefield proposal, which at least I think many of us, and even on the council, were a bit surprised about. Not that we didn't know that there were discussions, not that at the last meeting, it hadn't been discussed about looking at that land, et cetera, but it had never sort of floated its way through and sort of been discussed as to the details of what we were going to do. So I just think as we move forward, we really need to have more dialogue, and I think that's really, really important. And on the parking area, I think all of the discussions we've had here, at least, have been on the Block Island side, having actually toured the facility many times with RIAC, talking about pay for parking in certain areas, talking about long-term annual leases, things of that nature. But again, as sort of the tactics roll out, I think the more input and the upfront input that you can have from the town manager, if you need the council, whatever, the better, because sort of the devil's in the details, if I can say that. And so I think we all need, I guess my lesson would be, we all need to figure out how to socialize with the community better proposals, because as a general statement, people don't like to be surprised. And I guess to Keith's point, there's been some surprises lately, whether they were, however that happened is not really the point. But we want to sort of figure out how to continue to work together and make sure that things are working for Block Island as a lifeline airport. So.
Well, and I can actually let Brian perhaps talk a little bit more about the process before us, but just as you know, there actually is not a proposal that is ready for presentation. We were surprised as well when someone from had effectively announced details regarding the parking proposal that were not accurate. I don't know if it was inaccurate information, and that was not something that was certainly expected from RIAC. When we do have a proposal we're sharing, we will be happy to share that with you. I'm happy to actually defer to Peter Eichley, who is the president of Flight Level Aviation. He may actually be able to give you a little bit more information on the process that we've directed him to follow as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. It's Peter Eichley. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I'm the owner and CEO of Flight Level, and really appreciate everyone's comments. I live in Maine. I'm familiar with sort of the lifeline that, Penobscot Island Air provides to all the Maine islands where the populations are sparse, where, inclement weather makes flying the only way to get people to hospitals, to get critical supplies, to get just the mail. So it's certainly not lost on me, the asset that the airport is, and that New England, the service that New England Airlines provides the island. This is still a work in process. I feel like, we have been communicating with stakeholders pretty much since our contract began in July of 2018. What we're contemplating is simply bringing Block Island in line with some of the other neighboring airports where there is scheduled commercial service. And we're not even bringing it in line as far as rates go. It's going to, it would be on the lower end of the scale as far as car parking rates go. We don't want to negatively impact New England Airlines or anyone else. At the same time, we have a balance in that we need to improve. My company has a fiduciary duty to improve, the deficit that RIAC incurs in running these airports every year. And when something's been for free for a long time, it's really difficult to give that up. And so that's the struggle here. And I totally get it. We have been communicating with New England Airlines. We'll continue to do so. But as far as, all the recent press articles that have gone out, and some of the hysteria that's arisen through just the parking issue, I think it's a little premature. I think a panic button was hit when it didn't need to be hit. Like Brian said, we're not doing anything this summer, and we're going to continue to talk to the stakeholders to make sure we get a plan in place that makes sense. But with the caveat that when you've had something for free for a really long time, sometimes you're never going to be happy that now you have to pay, and that's human nature. So I guess that's sort of the counterbalance, to the whole notion that, obviously we're never going to do anything to sacrifice or compromise, the lifeline that New England Airlines provides the island. So those are just some of my overarching thoughts. But like I said, we've been looking at this issue. There are, problems. It's beyond just an additional revenue stream for RIAC. There are the abandoned vehicle issues, the unaccounted for owner issues that are ongoing. And, I think the programs that were in place when it was Avports and when it was Landmark before Avports, I don't think those did enough to solve those problems, but we hope that our proposal will.
Thank you, Peter. Keith Stover?
Yeah, for what it's worth, you certainly didn't hear from me, and I don't actually think you heard from a lot of people, at least in the Block Island community, that there is a lack of willingness to pay for,
Oh,
you
Keith.
know, we already do with great respect. I don't know whether you can hear me now, Andre. This is just frustrating. We already pay for parking. We're used to paying for parking. So this was, in my opinion, you know, I want it to be fair to people. I want it to be fair to New England Airlines. But again, who are your stakeholders? To me, the rollout of the parking thing was something that could have been mitigated with a successful engagement of folks in town. But that's, you know, maybe maybe you have that on your agenda, but you know,
I don't think there's been a rollout, Mr. Councilman. We have not presented it. And that's as far as premature reaction, I'm only referencing the news articles that came out in the Providence Business Journal a week or two ago. That's all I'm referencing. That's all I sort of know about.
Thank you, Peter. Keith, are you all set?
Yeah.
Thank you. Martha
I'm
Ball?
good. Thank you.
Martha Ball? Martha, did you have a question? Martha, you're on mute. There you go.
Okay, I wasn't on. I didn't think I was on mute. I'm sorry. Now this is, I think, what I'm trying to get to what has just been discussed. We're talking about parking, but do we have a proposal? Is there going? I mean, I feel like we're talking about air here, and we don't have anything to put our hands on. And where are we in? Is this in a planning process? Are we partway through this? I don't know if the manager has had input or been had communication. I mean, I'm pretty sure I don't have anything in my packet about parking other than what's on the agenda. What are we actually talking about here? Can somebody clarify that for me? Because it sounds like we're reacting to things that don't exist.
Thank you, Martha Ball. I think from my point of view was that we did, as Peter says, you know, bombarded with questions and emails, council members, you all got them. We didn't know anything about it. You know, we heard things, you know, we just hear things, we get bombarded. We didn't know anything about it. Call the town manager didn't know anything about it. So what I was asking earlier was that I know this has been settled. This isn't going to happen until September or, you know, later, I guess I'm not really sure. That's why I wanted you to update us on that first, because I thought we were over, you know, kind of not over it, but this wasn't going to happen this summer. And I think that's what the angst was in the community, was that, you know, this was going to start here, you know, before the summer, and this, that, and the other thing. And I get that. I guess what I'm trying to say is that on all of these items, it seems as though there's a communication breakdown between what's happening at the airport, what Flight Level's doing with the parking, or what RIAC is planning on doing with Peter at Flight Level. So what I was trying to get the answer to was, where does the parking stand now? Because there isn't anything on it. And just to let the public know where that stood. But I'm kind of feeling like all of these things, we get the information from anxious residents, and I'm trying to figure out a way for that to not keep happening, because this is what causes angst, and I think this is why we're here today.
Well, okay. First of all, can we focus on the parking? not get on to other things that we've been getting lots of letters for the moment. And you keep referring to this is going to happen. What is this? And where is this, quote unquote, this?
Right. And
So-
this-
What are you talking about? And where do we have it? And where is it written down? Is it written down? Is it still fluid?
So what we have,
We're just dancing around here. What's going on?
so thank you,
Frustrating.
council member, and this program is being developed. Again, Flight Level as our, they do this for us, not only at Block Island, but all across the system, and they're professionals at 10 airports across the country. They're developing a key plan that we will be rolling out. Once that is finalized, there'll be a very public process where we will share the results of that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we are not rolling out this program this summer, and we will look to roll it out in September.
You're muted, Andre.
Sorry. I don't want any more misinformation from the paper or from whatever source. I
Yeah,
don't know
we
what's
think
going
that's
on.
Unfortunate. As an example, I mean, whether it's sources or paper or sources to papers, I mean, the example of how this type of topic got exaggerated is an individual put out and actually attributed it to Flight Level, which was refuted by Flight Level very publicly. That the revenue stream from this would be $35,000 a month. That is just clearly inaccurate, and it's we would just like to kind of state to the facts. We're developing a program. Actually, Flight Level's developing it. We're going to have a recommendation come in from Flight Level. It'll be rolled out in a public process. We have been communicating over our many meetings, as Mr. Goodman referenced earlier. With our strategic planning process. This has been discussed going back to 2017. We're dealing with several factors, including the parking congestion, abandoned vehicles, and other items on Block Island for us at the airport. We're taking into consideration several factors through the benchmarking that has been done. We've identified that in the area we are, Block Island and actually Block Island and Westerly airports are the only two airports with regularly scheduled service to an island that does not have a paid parking program. So we're pulling all of that together. We know we'll end up with a very good professional feedback and recommendation from Flight Level. And even on recent discussions, as Peter was saying, as Mr. Eckley was saying earlier, he's been communicating and coordinating with all, the different stakeholders, including New England Aviation, dating back many months. We see that viewpoint has changed right now, and what we would like to do is get the input from everybody and make sure that we properly incorporate that. So we've asked Flight Level to go back, and they are going back and specifically getting input from New England Airlines. We'll continue to do that, and with a plan on having a good public process on this and rolling it out for September.
Thank you, Brian. I have Marion Crawford, then I'm going to go to Mark Emanuel, and then I have a question from the public, Sean McGarry. So Marion.
So I want to be clear here, because I've been listening to this conversation for a little while now. So what I'm hearing is the parking is looking to be implemented around September 1st, give or take a little bit. So that's about 90 days away. What I've also heard is that you plan to have seasonal parking and passes, commercial and residential. I think you've talked about different fees. You've also spoken about signage that will be available and designated for Bethany's at the Block Island Airport. You talked about an app that will be used for fee collection. You talked about, I guess, a soft opening this summer. So with 90 days away, when do you see some of this stuff firming up? And when would you be prepared to come back to the town and the council, I guess, with the more definitive plan? Because 90 days and it's summer, it's going to go quick here. And that's what I don't want to have happen. What I'm hearing from the council is And what I'm hearing from the president from Flight Level is you're still working on the plan. So I guess, how much longer do you plan to work on the plan? When do you see yourself coming back to the council? And based on that timeline, are you still looking at a September 1st implementation date?
Thank you, Mary Ann.
So thank you, Ms. Crawford. As we're looking out, and you did highlight, some of the items that are being planned in there, and we appreciate your coordination as we're going through this, and including the past meetings that we've had. As we go forward, we will come back, and Flight Level is actively engaged in this. We're going to have recommendations very shortly. We're asking them to go back and circle back around with some key stakeholders, including New England Airlines, and we expect a recommendation very shortly. We will roll that out most likely over the summer in the July, August timeframe, with a clear process going forward. It will be public. We will publicly post it. We're more than happy to follow up with the town manager, any town council members as we're going through it. We appreciate the feedback as we're going through it, and we'll make sure we have a good rollout of this, something that makes sense. And we do appreciate the lifeline in the importance of the airports and the service to the island. I will tell you from RIAC's perspective, each and every one of our 6 airports is critically important to us. We're very focused on it. For Block Island, as you know, as we've gone through, there's a large subsidy that ends up going back to the aviation users and aircraft owners that operate at Block Island. As an example, we have in place the Flight Level agreement for aeronautical services at Block Island. That by itself costs significant dollars, approximately $180,000 to $200,000 on that island. So we see the importance. We continue to invest. We continue to invest not only in the operations, but in the capital improvements across the system. We're very vested in the strategic business plan, which will guide us. It is the right approach for us as a system, and will guide us as over the next 10 to 20 years for this system. So the island, and even beyond parking as an example, but the island and the service and this airport is very critically important to RIAC, and will continue to be as we go forward. So we will make sure that as we're rolling out the finalization of this program, that we do it in a public manner and share it back. And we appreciate the input from the town manager and any council members as well.
Thank you, Brian. Mark Emanuel?
Yes, gentlemen, maybe John or Brian can answer this one. In a letter from our state senator to your president, she stated that based on FAA statistics, Block Island is one of the busiest general aviation airports in the state. If that is true, then why is Block Island revenue negative for you? Is it because the few existing dedicated revenue streams you have are inadequate, and that's why you want to implement others?
Thank you, council member. And as we look from an FAA perspective, I'd also like to add a little bit of a context for everybody. So we, as Rhode Island Airport Corporation, as I was mentioning, are responsible for all 6 airports across the country. We're the sponsor for all 6, and we manage and operate all 6. For Block Island itself, there is a significant amount of operating costs that go into running the island for us. And as I referenced, the costs that we incur with the FBO operation there. And there is currently a limited revenue stream that we have available to us. And that limited revenue stream comes from all the items I was highlighting earlier in the discussions as we're going through our strategic business plan. The struggles that we have and the hurdles that we have from a factual perspective is we do not have the benefits that many other states have and our neighboring states have from these other aviation taxes and fees that end up burdening the users of these facilities, but also contribute to the operations and capital development costs. And those include the aviation fuel tax at Block Island, nor do any of the other airports in the state of Rhode Island have. the low fuel flowage fees that all the users and owners benefit from, the low registration fees that all the users and owners benefit from, and also if you are a Rhode Island registered aircraft and you're flying to Block Island, you do not pay the landing fee there. So those are a lot of the underlying issues and the facts that we're dealing with as we go forward. So Block Island as the example, which is consistent across most of our general aviation airports, but Block Island as the example has a very high cost of operations. We continue to pay debt service on a beautiful terminal that's out at Block Island. So there's capital costs, there's debt costs, and there's operating costs with a very limited and constrained revenue stream, which in Rhode Island we offer, with the lower cost, lower fees, and the lack of aviation fuel tax, we don't have the benefits of those, and nor do the aircraft owners and operators have the burden of those. But part of that is that revenue stream from those sources do not come through to fund these type of operations. So those are the facts and the hurdles that we're looking at in the strategic business plan as we go forward as well.
The landing fees just aren't cutting it.
Landing fees do not cut it.
You all set?
Andre?
Go ahead, Martha, and then I'll go to Sean McGarry.
Yeah. I've been listening to these conversations for a while, and the lack of a fuel tax is an irrelevancy because we don't sell fuel. I always understood that was one of the larger shortfalls out here, was the lack of fuel, the lack of sales, et cetera, and so forth. But the fact that Rhode Island doesn't have this tax doesn't mean anything because we don't sell fuel anyway. There was a statement that was made a while back. I'm sorry, I don't remember who said it, but there was a reference that New England or maybe it was Block Island and Wesley were the only airports that had an airline running to an island. Or I don't remember I'm honest, it was several conversations back. I hate Zoom. And we're the only island. And don't tell me Newport's an island. Newport has bridges. It doesn't count. And I think that's the point the Keith tried to make when we were opening up here, that there is this huge differential that we have out here. And I also think, and it's been mentioned by several councilors, that needs to be restated. I don't think anybody's objecting to parking. People were objecting to parking coming in at the last minute just as summer started. But long-term parking, I don't think it should be free up there. And I think a lot of people would agree with that.
I think a lot of people do agree with that, Martha.
Thank you, and we do appreciate that, and we do recognize the importance of Block Island being in the airport there, and the service that is there, and the lifeline as it was referred to earlier. So we do see that importance. Part of what I was referencing a little earlier when in the discussion was in the research that we were doing in regards to Block Island and Westerly being the only surrounding and regional airports that have regularly scheduled service without a parking fee in place, a vehicle parking fee in place. But we as RIAC continue to recognize, and you see it through our capital improvements, and through our continued funding of these operations, again, without those other revenue streams that we have in place. Just to clarify as well, and recognizing that one of the lack of revenue streams on the island is we do not sell aviation fuel on the island, but our other airports across the system in Rhode Island do sell aviation fuel. That aviation fuel, and that is a very large issue, again, a large fact that we're dealing with on that lack of revenue stream from aviation fuel tax to reinvest and utilize it at our airports and at our general aviation airports and for Block Island, as this is an example, is a reality of one of the major hurdles that we're dealing with as a state. The example is Connecticut, where that aviation fuel tax that is charged does directly go back and benefit the general aviation airports in the state of Connecticut. And as I referenced a little earlier in the discussion, that was to the tune in 2019 of more than $7 million, $7 million of revenue stream that is utilized for both operational and capital type of costs. So it is a real big issue and a real, an example of an item that we're focused on with the strategic business plan. Not saying putting in place an aviation fuel tax, but the hurdles and the constraints that we're dealing with.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I think the council members' belief that the fuel tax was sort of irrelevant for Block Island because Block Island doesn't sell fuel. I understand why it's confusing, in that all the other airports that pump fuel would, if there were a tax in place, would contribute revenue to the state, which then could go back into all the airports, including Block Island. But because that doesn't exist in Rhode Island, that revenue stream is gone. I hope that clarifies it. So it is a big deal that Rhode Island doesn't have it, because if it did, those are dollars that would be able to be allocated to Block Island.
So why doesn't it have it, and why can't we get it in Rhode Island?
Because the public doesn't want it. The general aviation pilots, if you think they resist vehicle parking, they will resist aviation fuel taxes, probably like you wouldn't believe. It would make their gas more expensive.
And for us, a few years ago, we did propose some legislation, and there was legislation that was to put in place an aviation fuel tax, and it did not go anywhere. And again, remember, Rhode Island is one of only 3 states that does not charge it. So again, it's another one of those exceptions to the rule, again, that benefits the owners and operators, but is a lack of revenue stream to be reinvested in these airports.
What are the other 2 states?
Ohio and South Carolina.
Nice work, Brian. I didn't have them handy.
It was on the presentation.
Thank you.
Those that have airlines on their license plates, for pity's sake. Sorry, I'm going to go on mute again.
Don't worry about it, Martha. Thank you. And thank you, Brian. I'm go to Sean McGarry and then Rick Viller, and then there's a phone number there I don't recognize. But I do have 2 things to follow up on. Why don't you sell fuel here? Is it just economically not feasible?
Yeah, I mean, the capital required to install a fuel farm at an airport where the main runway is only, gosh, if I get this wrong, I'll look really bad, but I think it's 2,500 feet. So to get a fuel farm on an island to only service piston aircraft, primarily piston aircraft, is a lose. Number one, because piston aircraft take avgas, which has tiny margins. So whatever enterprise installs the fuel farm, whether it's a private enterprise like my company, or whether it's the state of Rhode Island, or whether it's the local government surrounding Block Island, that is going to be a net negative cash drain on whoever does it. It would take, to just pay for the fuel farm installation itself, would probably take 60 or 70 years in the flowage fee that you would collect from pumping the gas. When you had it there, you'd have to hire people to pump the gas. You'd have to hire people to quality check the gas. You'd have to hire people to maintain the fuel farm. You'd have to insure the fuel farm. You'd have to take the environmental precautions that are annual expenses to keep the fuel farm compliant. And for just, that airport might do 60,000 gallons of avgas a year. That's probably generous because it's only about a 4 or 5 month a year airport. So it's probably more like 30,000 gallons. So think about $1 million investment minimum with ongoing annual costs of probably $150,000 minimum, and generating gross profits on the fuel. Call it 50,000 gallons at 50 cents per gallon is what you could make. So there's $25,000 a year to support that investment.
Well, thank you for that. I just want to get that out into the public because I know that's been discussed over the years. All right, so Sven, I see your hand up. I'm going to go to Sean McGarry and then Rick Villa.
Good evening, Andre.
Good evening, Sean. We hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. For those from RIAC who don't know me, I'm Sean McGarry. I'm the owner of Block Island Recycling Management, waste hauling company here on Block Island. And the reason I'm going to chime in is I heard the words Cushman and Wakefield, and immediately the hair stood up on the back of my neck because they serve as representative for Verizon in their vendor services. And Cushman and Wakefield is, you know, a cookie cutter kind of organization. Block Island does not fit that cookie cutter kind of scenario. For example, as a vendor, I was required by Cushman and Wakefield to register as a vendor for $1,500 per year to serve as a vendor, but Verizon only does about $600 worth of business with me. So obviously, financially, that doesn't make any sense. So I don't understand what your relationship is with Cushman and Wakefield, and maybe you could explain that to us further. And thank you, Andre.
Thank you, Mr. McGarry. Again, Brian Chattel here. So our relationship is with Hayes and Sherry, Cushman and Wakefield, and we utilize Hayes and Sherry as a professional real estate broker in the state of Rhode Island. And it's not just for Block Island, it's for all 6 of our airports. And currently, as part of the strategic business plan, and as we look again at potential other both economic development parcels and also revenue streams for these airports, the team from Hayes and Sherry is actually assisting us and our professional brokers to promote those areas for development specific to Block Island. And again, based on several of these public meetings and planning process, and again, valuable feedback that we've gotten from the town over the time. We're looking for potential opportunities for development that can not only benefit the airport, but also the town.
Thank you, Brian. Rick Villa?
Andre, it looks like you're frozen.
Me on town internet. Anything I can do?
No, you're good now.
Okay, thank you. Everybody else is frozen on my screen, though I can't hear anything.
You can't hear me?
I can't. I can hear you.
You haven't frozen to me, Andre.
Rick Villa, do you? I can hear people. Everybody's just frozen. Rick Villa, would you like a comment? You're muted, Rick.
All right, that's the first time I got that.
Rick.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
All right, am I on? Hello?
Rick, we hear you loud and clear.
All right. I want to.
I can.
You're on.
I'm on?
We hear you, Rick.
Okay.
Yeah, he's on.
I would like to remind every town council member attending this meeting, which is everyone, of Brian Chattel's statement, quote, "We plan in public," end quote. Number 2, I would like to point out to the town council that Mr. Chattel did not answer the town manager's question about timing and implementation in any clear and straightforward way. Number 3, I would like to ask Mr. Chattel, who is the CFO of RIAC, whether the RIAC excuse me, Mr. Shuttle, the CFO of RIAC, whether the CEO of RIAC earns more than the governor of Rhode Island in total compensation. Mr. Shuttle, could you answer that question?
So I will address a couple of those points. Thank you. And we do plan in public. As we've been going through the strategic business plan, we have been very forthright. And as Mr. Goodman was mentioning, with many public meetings, many stakeholder meetings, and as we go through this process, as a matter of fact, you can visit our website and go to the General Aviation Strategic Business Plan section of that, and you can see documented notes and minutes from all of these meetings that we've been going through over this whole process. We do have a very, so that's the answer to the first one. The second one is, I believe I did specifically answer that. We were, as we were planning, ideally, we would have loved to roll out the parking because we do have serious issues that we're dealing with here. We have been communicating and coordinating both through public meetings and direct meetings with the town and with the town manager and with the stakeholders through the area of the area through many months and many years. So we will continue to do that. And I believe I specifically answered the question on the timing. We will be developing that over the summer with a plan to roll it out for September. And as we're complete and we give it its proper due diligence, as we've asked Flight Level to go back and do and get get additional input from New England Airlines, we'll roll out the specific timing of how we have that put in place. So we will roll that out this summer. We will roll out in a very public way the plan for parking with a plan to have it implemented, the program in place for September. In regards to any type of discussions on any specific individuals, I'm not going to address that at this point. I will turn it back to the councilman for that.
Did Brian cut out on everybody, or is it just me again?
I heard him.
All right.
Go
Can we just hold a second? Okay, can we hold a second? I'm having problems here with hearing things. I'm going to switch over to and okay. We good? No.
Your picture is frozen, but now we see you.
All right. Okay, I keep losing. Hold on, I have one of the wonders here to help me out here. I think I'm fine. I was on public, now I'm on NS.
Okay. And to all the RIAC people, you're now seeing the benefits of our
As you can see.
broadband or lack of. And Andre's in the highest speed area.
All right, I know, but we're supposed to.
While we're waiting, do you mind if
it's in my head.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd like Councilman, just to add in, just for the timing as well, is as soon as we have a draft plan and we have a good plan finalized with Flight Level, we will roll that out. Again, we're going to be transparent as we go through this, and we'll share it with the public, including the council, as we roll it out.
I have to ask this
Okay,
question
thank you.
again.
Go ahead,
When
Martha.
you say roll out, do you mean roll out a proposal or roll out a done deal?
We will be
Did you hear-
putting. Yeah, I'm sorry. So to answer that question, we're going to gather all the input and we're going to roll out the program that we're going to have in place. We have benchmarking. We're gathering additional information and input from from you all tonight as an example, and we appreciate that. And we're actually also gathering information from other users, including New England Airlines. We're going to gather all that and put it into the plan and the program and then roll that out.
Okay, I'm going back to my question. When you say program, I said, is this going to be a proposal or is it going to be a done deal? It sounds like program means done deal.
We will come back with, again, the program that is being proposed to us, right, from flight level. So we will be rolling out a program based on a proposal that we have in place from flight level.
So to answer Councilman's question, you'll be rolling out a done deal after input, like from events like tonight.
What we'll do is we will share that plan with the council for input. So we'll share the proposed plan with the council for input before rolling out a done deal.
Thank you. I think that's.
Does that answer the question?
Hold on,
So
hold
we
on.
will share the proposed plan with the council before rolling out the program.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Martha, are you all set with that?
Well, I'm the put up the damn rope person. Yeah, it's not really being made terribly clear. Is there any possibility of having a meeting on the island, depending upon how everything works out the next couple of months, prior to this being done, or at the time you're asking for input? Because we've clearly seen tonight how well Zoom doesn't work. And I think we all feel like we're having a lot of difficulties. This is why I'm not even trying to be on video, because I know it won't work.
Can I answer that from Ryan? Yeah. So
Yes,
absolutely. From our perspective, absolutely. We value the input from all the stakeholders, including the town, including the town council. So we would welcome that for a meeting specifically on the island, and we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, Brian. Mark Manuel, hold on one second. I got 464-2231. I have 741-5136, and then I have Sven Riesem, and then I'll get back to Mark. So that being said, 464-2231, if you could unmute yourself and identify and let us know what's on your mind this evening.
Hi, this is Kristen Bauman. How are you all tonight?
Good, Chris.
Yeah, you just got a little victory there. They're going to come back with a proposal. That's what we heard loud and clear. So good work. My question does a little bit of a loop back to Sean McGarry's question. And of course, here we are again with technology. The brochure that was attached to the agenda tonight was from the agency, Cushman and something, and Sherry and Hayes or something. And we heard from someone that's part of the strategic plan. Well, that includes some language about office space, storage, and green initiatives. So I'm curious as to whether that will be part of this proposal as well, or will this proposal just be about the parking piece? Or should we be looking for other ways this property will be used? My computer just came back up. Outdoor storage, office space, and green energy initiatives. So are those also in the works, and will they be part of this proposal? Thank you.
So just to clarify, the Hayes and Sherry brochure that I'm sure was attached to the agenda tonight is a notice of availability. So again, we work with Hayes and Sherry as our professional real estate broker to identify available property and parcels across our entire system. So those are examples of potential uses for these, both the aeronautical and non-aeronautical uses. I would like to just remind some of the concepts of potential, needs you know, we know there's a storage need that has been discussed with the town over the years, and then obviously the aeronautical type of potential development and an additional type of space there. So again, that is a brochure that's in place to identify available and potential development opportunities. And again, any interest would come in through the broker and be evaluated as we go forward. There is not a specific proposal that's coming back for any of those areas there. But again, any interest can go, you know, would go through the broker and then come back as it's vetted to RIAC.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, so 741-5136. If you could unmute yourself and state your name for the record, let us know what's on your mind. You're muted. *6. *6 to unmute 741-5136. While that person, go ahead, you're unmuted.
And hi, it's Henry DuPont. I just wanted to welcome RIAC to the conversation. It's great that they can update the community. And I also wanted to say that when RIAC likes to work closely with the community, sadly, that's not in their DNA, because in 2015, they raised the Block Island Airport landing fee by 350% from $10 to $35 with no notice to anyone until you landed and were told that's what you owed. And in 2018, the RIAC hired Flight Level to operate the airports, and they made it optional for them to operate Block Island. And we didn't find out about it until our airport attendants got pink slips and were laid off. And it took 6 months to get them back. And in 2019, RIAC cut $4.3 million out of their own capital improvement budget for an expanded parking apron without any notice to anyone. And in 2021, we've got a paid parking for fee program, which wasn't made up. I mean, it was in the works, and they were hoping to get it in place early this summer. And when enough blowback came out in the Providence Business News and from others, they suspended it until this spring. And now we've got a advertisement from Cushman and Wakefield for airport lots for lease. I mean, that's out there. And it's on the RIAC webpage. They're inviting people to bid on these pieces, and I don't think the community knows about that. So let's hope that RIAC can give us a little better working with the community than they have. With regard to the state fuel tax, RIAC tried to get statewide fuel tax in 2018, and as they mentioned, it was beaten back in the legislature. It went nowhere because everyone in general aviation and the airlines all successfully fought it. With regard to them saying that the aircraft registered in Rhode Island don't pay landing fees, well, we don't at other Rhode Island airports because we pay tie down and hangar fees that are thousands of dollars. And as a general courtesy, states that are collecting tie down and landing fees at airports do not charge landing fees at their own airport or at the neighboring airports. And then lastly, with regard to parking, I don't think anyone has a problem with charging for long-term parking at the airport parking lot. However, when we met with RIAC in February of 2020, we walked around the parking lot, we pointed out the abandoned cars and said, if you wanted to tow these out of here and make some improvements and perhaps some fencing and security lighting, people would be willing to pay for parking. But sadly, none of that's happened. And 2 more abandoned cars got towed into there this week without plates and with the VIN numbers obscured. And I would respectfully ask, Ryak, when was the last time you removed the abandoned cars from the parking lot? Because if you're looking for parking places, there's dozens that you could add to the mix by simply removing the cars that are in there. And thank you very much for accepting my comments.
Thank you, Henry.
First, Warden, if I may, I did just want to, I'm not going to address everything here, but I think, I do take the council at the spirit of what they're conveying in terms of keeping the town informed. Again, when we have a proposal on parking, we will keep the town informed. It's just not helpful and not productive to have individuals who are not informed at all providing information to the media, to the public, to the town council. We're a phone call away. We could have quickly, I mean, even for Mr. DuPont to confirm that there's not a proposal that's being presented at this point. But overall, I would say as much as we're doing what we can to keep the town informed, and I think this does illustrate, I think there was some skepticism before when I said, if you ask the aviation community, RIAC should be doing, the bidding of the aviation community and not necessarily being concerned about the community. We are concerned about the community. We are concerned about the aviation community. And what we're really trying to do is create a sustainable airport system and a sustainable Block Island State Airport, because it is your lifeline. So those are issues of concern in terms of how the general aviation airports in Block Island are currently funded. It's the airlines effectively, their landing fees, what they pay to support our national airport system that is really keeping the GA airports running. We all know that they've been hit hard during the pandemic. We've been worried even before the pandemic that some of those resources could dry up. Now we could also be in an environment where we're seeing major investments in infrastructure at a national level. This could be a very good time for to improve facilities, with safety being the top concern. The preference that the aircraft owners and operators have regarding parking on the turf rather than parking on asphalt, we understand those are very expensive aircraft. And we are going to be putting forward a proposal in the fall that would allow for potential expansion. Again, but the federal government is going to decide those issues on a safety first. And I think everyone can get behind safety being the number one concern as opposed to preference. But again, we actually do appreciate Mr. DuPont's input. We do caution everyone to make sure that, again, just feel free to call us if you have questions about where we are at any time. We're happy to take your calls. And that goes for anyone in the community.
And John, if I may, Mr. Goodman, if I may add in on a couple additional comments following those comments. I think it just goes to highlight again the revenue streams as Mr. DuPont was referencing the landing fees as an example. Our low landing fees, and it is unique to Rhode Island to have a system in place where general aviation and aircraft owners do not pay landing fees at any one of the airports in the state of Rhode Island. And again, that is a benefit that flows through the aircraft to the aircraft owners and is a lack of revenue stream for us as we look at managing these airports across the system and putting in place. And we truly appreciate all the feedback received tonight, and the feedback we'll continue to get. And we're confident we'll have a good plan that makes sense for the town and RIAC rolling forward in regards to parking. But that type of concern or feedback from or misinformation that gets put out causes issues to the conversation that are not really needed, and as an example, as Mr. DuPont was referencing a $4.3 million expansion expanded parking apron at Block Island. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we do plan in public. So as we go through that planning in public, and all of our capital programs, no different than any business, are always tentative, always, and always subject to change. Right now at Block Island, we are in the final stages, and we have our apron rehabilitation project that's moving forward, and we are working closely with the FAA, and again, with some feedback from the aircraft owners as well. Flight Level specifically will be tracking activity at Block Island over the coming months as we look to gain statistics to put in place for a potential application for federal funding of a potential ramp expansion. But I think it's also important for the council members to know that RIAC is in the process and working with the FAA on the potential of a $1.9 million investment in the aprons on rehabilitating those right now. And we'll be working with, and actually Flight Level will be taking the lead on looking at statistics over the coming months for to see what is there. Because as we go through with the FAA and look at priorities for us as a system, everything gets evaluated, and there are different types of priorities from safety all the way through capacity. And again, we'll look at the data over the next month, this summer, heading into the fall of a potential, see what the data says as far as any type of potential expansion, and we'll be looking to coordinate that in the fall.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Peter Reichley from Flight Level. Is it okay if I chime in for a minute?
Is it on that topic?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to respond to Mr. DuPont's comments. I guess I'll start by saying I'm looking forward to meeting Mr. DuPont for the first time in person because he's passionate about aviation. He loves Block Island. He loves general aviation. So do I. He also has a really good relationship with one of our leaders in our Rhode Island operations. And I think sort of in a no good deed goes unpunished type scenario, in being too, while we were still considering ideas and throwing things against the wall early on, he may have heard from people at Flight Level, who expressed, for example, the passport system, which is one of the providers we're contemplating using for the vehicle parking. But there was a lot of detail that if the article that quoted Mr. DuPont quoted him correctly, that Mr. DuPont just got wrong. And we may had some hand in that, and that we were sort of too forthcoming early on in the process. And it was all done in good faith and knowing that he's a civic leader out on Block Island. But obviously when some of those things that, we were talking about, and some, frankly, that we weren't even talking about. I don't know how there's a barnacle system. It's called the Barnacle System for Enforcement that Mr. DuPont was quoted for in that article. And that was never a part of the conversation. My only thought is that maybe Mr. DuPont saw a PowerPoint presentation from Passport that showed all of their capabilities. And he somehow took that to mean that that's how we were going to track enforcement of parking, which was never going to be the case. So, it did a disservice for pretty much everyone. And the idea that, everything has been put on hold because the general public has used the press as a weapon, it's just not right. It's incorrect. And I think that is due to the miscommunication, and I'm sort of generously calling it that may have occurred between one of my employees and Mr. DuPont. So, that's sort of the context there that I think might be helpful for everyone. But like I said, I appreciate Mr. DuPont's business. He loves aviation, and I hope to meet him this summer at some point when we're out on Block Island.
Thank you, Peter.
Chairman, may I just add one last concept to that response as well?
Go ahead.
In regards to, like, if there is, okay, thank you. If there's one concept we hope we can leave with the town council here tonight is it's that struggle, for us. And when you look at the aviation and the aircraft owners, the aviation community and the owners and users of these facilities, there's that struggle. And I think Mr. DuPont probably highlighted it through his comments of, at the end of the day, Rhode Island has significant benefits and lower costs and some taxes that are not in place at many other airports across the country, that not in place here, but are in place at many other airports across the country. And the struggle as we go through this is really, we are providing those services. And as was referenced, the perfect example is adding in the aeronautical services at Block Island, again, that are being funded. So as we look at these general aviation airports, including Block Island, the service levels, we continue to invest in the service levels for the aircraft owners. We continue to invest in the capital improvements, as we're mentioning the runway rehabilitation project that's upcoming for Block Island as an example. We continue to do all those investments. That has not fluttered. We compare well with other airports on all factors related to that. We will continue in our service levels that we're providing to the users, especially for a lifeline airport like Block Island, will continue. And those examples that Mr. DuPont brought up as far as adjusting revenue streams or discussing additional costs are important to just reference that. That's the balance between from an aviation and aircraft owner looking for lower fees, but still looking for higher investments and operating services. And that's what we're focused on, in the strategic business plan will help us, with a long-term planned approach to dealing with that going forward.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to grab Sven finally. Marianne Crawford. Sven, go ahead. Then I'm going to go to Marianne. And then I'm going to go to a New Hampshire area code, and then Sean McGarry again. So Sven, go ahead.
Sure. A couple of things. One, thanks to everybody for all the comments around the horn. Since Mr. Eichley, you said this was a day of input. One comment that we've been dealing with as a town and an island over in the state lot over in Point Judith, which is where the ferry goes in, was that there's a state lot there and managed by DEMR. Anyway, and you can get an annual pass for parking there, but that annual pass doesn't actually guarantee you a spot. What that annual pass does is say you have a pass to go in and out, but if the lot is full, then you're sort of out of luck. So if you live here and you want to leave anytime between about June 5th and September 20th, on a Friday, and you come back to that lot in the afternoon on a Friday or a Saturday or even a Sunday, there's a high probability it's full and you can't get in. And so as you think about parking and long-term parking, one of the things that the town has been talking to the state a lot about in this parking facility and manager is, if you're going to pay for an annual fee, let's make sure there's an annual spot. And I think that comes to the airport very importantly, because if I am I don't care what, a commercial operator, and I want to pay for an annual fee, I want to be able to drive in there, park, and go to my flight in X minutes, not have to wait, hours for somebody to leave the lot. So I think guaranteed parking is important, and hopefully that feedback helps you in your planning. I guess the other thing that I think Martha Ball, Councilwoman Ball, talked about, Mr. Shuttle, is the idea that if we can sort of walk in steps, right? And if the first step is going to be, hey, sometime in August or late July, whenever it is, you guys are going to come and show us a plan and hopefully share that. And you, as you said, and Mr. Goodman said, that'll help sort of socialize what happens in September. And hopefully a plan is in a place that we can have input and feedback, that it's not locked in, and that it's a community participation event. Obviously, you'll make those final decisions. And then the same on any other major action. When you're a community of 1,000, as I think Mr. Stover said in the beginning, we all know many people that have been flown off at the airport. We all know many people that are impacted by the airport. And so as we think about anything to do with land, let's talk about that, as you get RFP responses in, and let's really try and work, as a community through those. Again, obviously, we understand your goals and hear them, But I do think that community input in a small community like this is really important. And then lastly, I think the town manager has been working with all of your staff, and I think that's a great conduit. But meetings like this are very, very important, and we appreciate you taking the time. And I guess we look forward to meeting in about 45 days to sort of hear the plan for parking, which I think of as step one in all of the stuff that's been discussed. Is that sort of a correct assumption about steps?
I think that sounds great. And and again, thank you so much. The last, just to circle back quickly, Mr. Dupont also mentioned that the abandoned vehicle situation, which I think is an issue for the island across the board, right? And specifically for us at the airport. And that is part of the issues that we're looking to address. And I will tell you that we have, just trying to make sure that there is not misinformation that's out there. We have addressed that. We continue to address it. We have had many, I believe at least 8 abandoned vehicles removed from the facility. It's a cost, it's an issue for us. And then the whole structure of it is when we look at it, and this is part of where we definitely value the feedback from everybody and the input from everybody, is what we see right now is as abandoned vehicles are removed, that spot gets refilled. So as we're looking at this plan going forward, we definitely appreciate the input, again, to address all factors, including making the parking setup and situation there better for everybody. As the town manager said earlier, we actually have already put in place some signage for the restaurant, for Bethany's as well, in an effort to help manage that parking area around there. So we're going to continue to stay focused on it. And again, the intent of this program is multi-factored as well. But I just want to make sure that, again, we don't have misinformation that may be out there, and just kind of correct any of those statements.
So Andre, just quick follow-up if I can. Whether it's Mr. Eichley or Mr. Chattel, if you can work with Marianne and Town Hall, as you may know, we have meetings at the beginning of August and then a work session sort of in the middle of the month. So just getting on the agenda to be able to discuss the proposal rather than, as Martha said, the sort of lockdown done deal, that would be great. So hopefully we can get that on the agenda.
Do you know when that next meeting is?
Not the next one, because otherwise that's in about 5 days. So if you're ready for that, then great, but I don't think so. So that's Marianne can coordinate it with you in the beginning of August, which is nice, or in middle of July or beginning of August.
Yeah, and we will definitely stay coordinated with Ms. Crawford because, and we truly appreciate, I mean, it's been a great relationship and we'll make sure we stay coordinated with her.
Thank you, Brian. Marianne?
So I have some questions, and hopefully this will add some clarity, and it's going to piggyback the questions I asked prior. It's along the lines of the question I asked about parking. Cushman and Wakefield, it's my understanding that it's not only Block Island Airport, but all your airports with acreage that you are soliciting folks that may be interested in leasing those properties over a 30-year period of time. So my question is, when is the due date? Is there a due date, or is this a rolling application process or submitting process? What will be the next steps on your part once you receive these? And I really understand the delicate balance of you have a board to report to and also letting the public know, because your meetings are public. So there's a good possibility you may say something in meeting public and not have the public to your board, and yet not have the opportunity to meet with the public because you are reporting to that group. So I guess my question is this rolling? What are the next steps? Are you going to vet these out before coming to the public, or will you come to the public and then vet them out? And what is your timetable associated with this? And then I have one other question that hopefully you can answer this evening, is that you do have a construction project that is on the horizon for the Block Island Airport. Originally, you spoke about some time ago starting in August 1st. We recommend that we have a lot of traffic at that point, and it was delayed. You pushed it to September 1st. is that still on tap for the project that you spoke to us about in the spring? Is that still on tap to start this September? And if so, when is the anticipated completion, and are you out on the street as it relates to contractors and bidding that project out? So those were a bunch of questions, sorry.
No, thank you, thank you. In regards, I'll handle the question in regards to the Hazen Cherry posting. There is not a due date, there is not a timeline. This is a notice of availability. Hazen Cherry, again, is our broker, offering traditional brokerage services for this. So again, that will be dependent on the demand and the interest that they receive on it. And then anything as far as a long-term lease would go through our board approval. But again, building off this discussion tonight, we'll make sure that we're coordinated with you, Marianne, and as well as we go forward. But there is no specific, we do not have any, just for a point of reference, we do not have any specific proposals in response to the solicitation at this point. And again, this will be a demand-driven type of development potential here. And again, a lot of this information that's included in here is consistent with what we put in place with our and discussed over our strategic business plan meetings. And again, if there is interest, it'll come through a traditional brokerage. This is not a due date timeline. Proposals due by a certain date. It's in essence a notice of availability.
So as for the project that you were talking about, Ms. Crawford, the bid apron rehab. So we're looking to issue a construction administration notice to proceed in August, with a contractor notice to proceed in September. And we foresee a substantial project completion by May of 2022.
Thank you, Dennis. That's very helpful. Marianne, are you all set?
I am, thank you.
Okay. Mark Emanuel.
Yeah, we deal a lot with legalese on town council, and tonight we've dealt a lot with corporatese. And I wish I had documented all the times the word plan, program, or proposal was said tonight. I'd like you to come back with what I consider a draft, and it's not semantics, because a draft means a starting point, not something that's more carved in stone. So the sooner we can get that draft, the sooner we can work in concert with you guys to perfect it. So again, it means a lot when you call it something that it really is, as opposed to something you say often in the corporate world. Now let's reference that Cushman and Wakefield. Now I could be incorrect, but one of the 4 parcels I believe is in residential A. And 2 things you learn out here when you buy property or own property. One is what you can do, and more importantly, what you can't do. That being the case in residential A, I don't think you can develop that in any way, shape, or form commercially without going through the process of planning board, zoning board, etc. Are you familiar with that? And I'm highlighting BID number 1 on your map.
Again, Town Councilman, thank you for that question. And what we will do is, again, that is area on the airport property, airport owned property. And we will make sure we're coordinated with you as we go through any type of potential development or interest on that. Any development or interest here or any one of our general aviation airports, or here in Warwick as well at TF Green, would all be subject to whatever the appropriate zoning is and permitting requirements that would be necessary for the potential development. So as we go through that process, and depending on the interest that comes through, we'll make sure that that's well coordinated, both from a permitting and an interest perspective.
And lastly, a comment and a final question. I agree with Councillor Ball. I'd love to actually meet face to face. So if we could do the timing for hopefully reopening where we could see each other and address these and get everyone in the same room, I would appreciate that and be in favor of that more so. And the last question I have goes back to what Mr. Dupont said. And there was some plus or minus $4 million allocated to the Block Island Airport. Are we ever going to see dime one of that money?
Was
Councilman,
there
I could address that. So again, that is a capital development plan that Mr. Dupont was referencing. So again, there's not this entity, or like any business, again, plans are developed and plans are organized. The funding around these plans, as I mentioned, we're in the process of embarking on about a $1.9 million rehabilitation project for the apron at Block Island. We have invested $6 million in the terminal. So you'll see continued investment at Block Island, but it's not like during a capital improvement planning or program that we put in place. We make it very clear that these are tentative, they're planning documents. It's not a document that puts in place to say that there are funds that are assigned to a specific project. They're tentative in nature, like any type of planning document. And again, you'll see improvements this summer, as Mr. Greco was referencing, about $1.9 million of improvements to the apron coming up in this fall. And again, over the years, we have invested millions of dollars in improvements, including the beautiful terminal that's in place at Block Island.
You all set, Mark?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. 1-603-677-2356. Could you state your name and let us know what's on your mind this evening? You are muted, and you would press star 6.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear
go
me?
ahead.
Hey,
Yep.
it's Subi.
Hi, Sue Black.
Hold on. My phone number says New Hampshire because I got my cell phone when I was up in at grad school up there. But I've actually lived across from the airport for 35 years now, so I'm on a butter. And we have a Bonanza. My husband's a pilot, and well, he's a ship pilot too, so he leaves a lot. So nobody's happier than me that you guys are doing this work, and we're finally going to get some hangars, because I'll tell you, when it starts blowing 30 out here, I don't sleep very well worrying about the plane being tied down. But so I really appreciate all the work you're doing, and I think the airport has some great potential. I understand now why we can't get fuel. You know, that would have been nice, but I learned in this meeting that we can't. And it'll help us a lot with our logistics of not always having to take our plane over to Dooney and put it in a hangar when Bill leaves. But what concerns me about this real estate ad I saw, as Mark mentioned, the land across the street, which is, residential A, and it does abut my property, but it also abuts the Enchanted Forest or the Nathan Mart Park. And our conservancy groups have worked really hard to, preserve that property. And I hate to see, that piece of land, not just because it abuts my property, because I wouldn't really see it from the angle it is, but just to have it be a place that's going to turn into a junkyard or whatever. I really think that that if you can do all the stuff you need to do across the street on the airport, the main airport property, that would be good. And also, if we're looking at what does our community need, yes, we need storage, but we also really need a community center. You know, we also really need some other things. So where do we speak about that? I realize that this conversation tonight was really only supposed to be about parking, but how can we give our community input on things like that? Of what do we really need as a community? I mean, yeah, storage for people that rent their summer houses would be nice, but that's not helping our year-round community. You know what I'm
Sue
saying?
Black.
All right,
Susan,
thanks.
No. Are you through? Because I could actually probably take a stab at answering that. I mean, I think that's a discussion we would have on a community level. And in fact,
Yeah.
I had, just before the meeting, I had just mentioned to Mary Ann that, you know, why don't we lease it? Why don't we lease it and put, you know, and talk about putting a fire safety complex up there, or, you know, apartments for residents, workers, whatever have you. So, I mean, my answer to that would be that would be a community discussion. But I'll let Brian tackle that if he'd like to.
I would just highlight, and again, thank you for those comments. You know, we appreciate it, and we'll continue to invest in here. As we look at the available property, again, working through a lot of the public meetings and public input that we got through the process, and again, town input in regards to those potential developments, a lot of it did come through. And again, this area is being marketed for lease. So again, there's not a specific use. There is not, and it would have to go through all the right proper permitting process and everything else associated with it. But RIAC is not putting a specific use to a specific parcel. So we would welcome, you know, any type of potential opportunities that would be there. And again, you know, we are utilizing the professional services of Hayes and Sherry on that area as well. So, you know, the storage as an example was highlighted by the town as storage is tight on the town. So again, that was just one of the examples of the potential utilizations of that area.
Thank you, Brian. And to follow up on that, Sean McGarry, I'll get to you in a second. To follow up on that, we did have these conversations with RIAC before the pandemic, and I believe we had a meeting. Somebody correct me on the timeline if I'm wrong, but we had a public posting on this. Was it November, December? And then we also had a meeting with you guys to discuss all of this. I believe in January, the beginning of January. So
That's correct.
Yeah. So it has been an ongoing discussion. I do want to say, I just want to circle back to what a few of the, you know, Martha Ball had brought up, and it's just that we had the discussion. There was a missing component. What I'm hearing and what I'm remembering is, I think the missing component was we had the discussions, and then all of a sudden we have this, and there was no in between there of a heads up, like, hey, we're going to put this out. This just, you know, like I said earlier in the meeting, this is got put on your website, and I don't really think anybody in the town knew. So, and it goes to what I was saying about the communication problem that I think we're having here. As a town, you know, we're a small community. Word spreads quick, and you know, you've heard it plenty of times tonight. You know, the more dialogue, the more information, the better. So I'll just leave that at that. But I do also want to, you know, just say to the community is that we have had, RIAC has scheduled these meetings. We've had these meetings with them. We had them with the former town manager. We had one, I think in September or November, and also in January. January. So I just, you know, it's not that this is just being dropped on anybody. But like I said, there is that component of when you wrap it all, looking at, we did discuss the boat storage. We discussed, personal storage for contractors and whatnot, additional parking, and there was other things we also discussed too that didn't make it into the plan that may have been, just unattainable. So I think the component is the heads up when the actual, everything's put together and sent out. So that's all I want to say on that. Sean McGarry?
Thank
Sean?
you, Andre.
You're welcome.
Just to follow up on my original question, I just want to make sure I'm clear. The Rhode Island Airport Corporation does not have a formal agreement with Cushman and Wakefield. That Cushman and Wakefield serves as a subcontractor of Hayes and Sherry, nor do they have aspirations to form a contract with Cushman and Wakefield. Is that correct?
Hayes and Sherry is Cushman and Wakefield. So if you look at so our local here is Hayes and Sherry. And again, this is a brokerage agreement with the firm as a professional broker, not only at Block Island, but across our entire system.
Good, Sean?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions, counselors, public? Ryak?
I just sum up saying the one good thing I think about the Zoom meetings, and it's probably the only one good thing, is that we all listen to each other. I think we don't talk over each other, and that's something that I think we've all found very valuable listening tonight, taking the spirit of the town council, as Keith Stover asked us to do, and as you, First Warden, have suggested, and Sven. But so, we hope we can continue that spirit of listening to each other when we get back, because it's, really refreshing that I think we all are doing that. And hopefully we can continue that in the personal meetings moving forward. So we look forward to joining you out on the island.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. Just to sum up from my perspective, and First Warden, thank you to all the council members, to Ms. Crawford for inviting us here tonight. We appreciate it. We look forward to staying in good communication and constant dialogue. And it helps just offset some of the concepts that just may be misleading that could be out there. For example, and I won't go into any specific examples, but we appreciate the dialogue. We are always here as needed, and we look forward to working with you as we go forward.
I thank you, Sven Reason.
Yeah, I look forward to Mr. Eichley working with Ms. Crawford on setting the date in end of July, early August, whenever it's going to be, for the review of parking, to use Mark's words, of review. And then sometime down the road, I think we should try and have these meetings every 6 months, so we avoid that sort of blind spot, and when information get a little confusing. So let's keep this dialogue going, and look forward to seeing you in person. Thank you.
Brian, I just want to say that I did listen to the hearing at the Senate at the State House the other night, in front of Chairman DePalma's committee, and personally, I learned a lot more about how you operate and what's needed. And I would strongly suggest anybody who could find that link, it's not easy, to listen to that testimony and listen to what went on in that hearing. And I understand that you are going to go back to that committee with the CPE explanation. You're smiling. That is something that is confused. I think that gets stuck in. I think what Mark had asked about is the employment. I think Mark would ask, I think, is tied to that. And I get lost. I tried to figure that, the CP, we have our own CPs here. So I think the employments or deplayments, and I could be wrong with my lingo there, and I think a lot of people are thinking that those employments entitle Block Island specifically to that money. I think that is when they say $1 million a year is earmarked, and I heard you say it's not earmarked because it goes to the thing, the organization. I think an explanation on it, when you can get that, like to define that and explain what that all means to everybody, because I think that's where our community is getting agita over, so to speak. And it was entitled, the words are used, entitled to it. Whereas the system, I think, if I'm correct, is entitled to it.
That's correct.
So those numbers just become part of the system, and then you allocate those funds to where they're needed. Is that correct?
So thank you, first of all. And if you bear with me for 2 minutes, I know it's getting late, but you just brought up two good questions and two concepts that I just want to make sure are clear. So for Rhode Island Airport Corporation, CPE, I'll start with the CPE question. Cost per enplanement is an industry metric that's used at commercial service airports. So here at TF Green, the cost per enplanement is the cost for the commercial carriers to operate at TF Green. So to go back to the underlying issues that we've been discussing this entire meeting here, with the lack of other revenue streams such as the aviation tax and the lower cost for these aircraft owners on landing fees, registration fees, and other items, what ends up happening is that subsidy for the aircraft owners to operate at our general aviation airports ends up coming from TF Green, and at the end of the day, coming from the commercial carriers that pay to operate here. So the cost per enplanement is an important industry metric. And for us, TF Green, part of our strategy is to have lower cost per enplanement to help the process of additional air service and making Rhode Island a business-friendly, user-friendly area to add additional service for Rhode Island here at TF Green. So at the end of the day, CPE is a very specific commercial air service, commercial airport metric specific to TF Green, and that's measured, and our goal is to bring that down. The impacts for us is when we look at it, the lack of other types of revenues for the general aviation airports resulting in these subsidies for the aircraft owners result in an impact that goes back to the cost for the airlines at the end of the day, and those shareholders for those airlines. What they expect is the cost that they pay to be reinvested at TF Green and the services they're providing. From an FAA perspective, they also look for our airports to be self-sufficient. That's part of our grant assurances. So everything we're talking about tonight and everything we're looking to do through our strategic business plan is a goal to make all of our airports in the system self-sufficient going forward. There's a lot of work to be done on that point, and some of these revenue producing parcels, potential parking fees that we put in place and other items will help towards that goal. And then going back to the question regarding grant funding, the other concept is grant funding that we coordinate with the FAA on. So the FAA, Block Island and Westerly being primary airports are eligible as long as enplanements are greater than 10,000 enplanements a year are eligible for these funds of $1 million, right? That is funds for RIAC as a sponsor for the airport system. Those funds are not earmarked. Earmarking would be to a project, or is not the right terminology for this. Those funds come back to RIAC as a sponsor, are available to RIAC as a sponsor for the system. And then through planning, both in the current year and future years, we work with the FAA on priority levels along the gamut from safety projects to capacity projects, and then funds get allocated to the appropriate projects as we go forward. So two very different concepts there.
And I just thank you for appreciate the explanation on that, because obviously it's these little things that, I don't, and I, kind of think we all just kind of need those, those definitions for that.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
but
appreciate you
and
asking, because I think that's some of the misinformation that may be out there and causing confusion on this. So I appreciate you asking those questions.
No, I appreciate it too. In closing, I just, I know, I mean, I gather from that meeting up at the State House, I mean, do you guys get beaten up wherever you go? I mean, because it didn't seem, it seemed like people are very passionate when it comes to you, and your organization. And I'm just, as a council, I think we all just want to move forward and progress. And I think in order to do that, it's the more information, the better. We will work through our town manager with you. But you have to understand, I think you already do understand, we have our Kraken that we affectionately call Henry. And that's, he represents a large group of the aviation community. So I think it's up to us to be in the middle of that, to move, to progress forward with the initiatives that are best for the town, but we have to filter all of that out. So I guess in leaving here, I think our council, I can speak for them in saying, we want to move forward and work with you. I know just before I was even on the council that, you bring up RIAC, it was like the third rail on Block Island. It was before, you as the vice president came in, it was before the president that's there now. And how can we just move forward and attain the goals that you need to, and we do too. So with that being said, I think communication is the key. Good, honest communication. So just please stay in touch with the town manager. And I would ask the community, if you have the questions, call, like they say, call them. I know there's a lot of animosity out there, but we have to move forward with this. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And I just hope we can accomplish that. And and as Mark brought up, the zoning in that, the lot one, I guess I'll call it lot one, is problematic for a lot of people on the island. So moving forward with that, just keep that in mind.
We appreciate that. And you know what, I think first of all, and as you mentioned, there's the balance that we have as I'm sure it's a shared balance that the council has as well, is there are many different stakeholders, and there's the local abutting community versus the aircraft owners, and there's different perspectives that are out there. And that's where I think you can see during a lot of our meetings, different perspectives. We try to do all the right things in the right manner, in the benefit of the communities that we serve. We are all here for the communities that we serve, Block Island and the state of Rhode Island. So we definitely appreciate that, and we look forward to working with you and great communication going forward.
Thank you, Brian. Anybody else on this topic? You're not allowed to leave just because you're here on the first item of the agenda. Hearing no more comments, and seeing no more hands, I will close discussion on this topic and move forward to number 2. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, John. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Dennis. Brittany, anybody else? Peter, I see you there, but you're not on video.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Appreciate you being here this evening. Next item on the agenda, discuss and review developmental pressures, commercial and residential on island infrastructure. Councilors, you had something in your packet, a discussion topics on this, and I'm hoping that you've had a chance to review that. And we discussed having this on an agenda, I think back in work session agenda back in January, and I think it was Sven. Did you bring this forward? And you sent in this memo. Do you want to take the lead?
Or Marianne? I don't, either way.
It's 2 pages. You can share a page.
So I'll take the lead, and Sven, I'm sure you won't hesitate to jump in.
After the last discussion, I will. No.
Also joining us this evening, so you know, is Allison Ring, our town planner. Allison, I forward this information also to Allison. We've had some.
Hold on, Mary Ann,
com-
I'm sorry. Is Allison gotten really tall or is she in a really short room?
I am in my attic at the moment.
Sorry, just had to point out that.
In the eaves. I just moved my desk, so.
He's in the shoebox council office.
Exactly.
Wait a minute, let's move on.
Little humor, sorry about that. Go ahead, Mary.
I did say Sven could jump in when he wanted to. I'll just remind everyone of that. But anyway, so Allison is joining us here this evening. Allison's our town planner. And when stuff like this come along as it relates to long-term planning regarding the town, I always look to her and her expertise and her insight on that. So I did ask her to join us this evening. As I've said to many of you during my tenure here and also during my interview, I think broadband, the implementation of that and the continuation of the installation of that is going to forever change the island and also the infrastructure of the island. So Sven and I have had some discussion about this, and he was nice enough to put together this objective. Basically, where's the New Shore infrastructure as it relates to the development that is going on in the Block Island, and not so much the development. I think, like I said, with broadband, I think you'll start seeing more folks staying here beyond the shoulder season. I think we may become a 9-month community as opposed to a 6-month community. So with that does come some not so much issues or concerns. We need to be prepared and start to address some of those concerns or infrastructure as we move forward. This includes such thing as water. This includes sewer. It includes roads. It includes servicing our people. It includes the fire department, the volunteer fire department, and all other services. So as Alice and I were discussing this, we said, okay, I think what we need to do is start to look at some data, start looking at some of the statistical data, and how do we go about doing that? And we said, let's look at the past 5 years and start pulling all that data together and then reviewing that data. It's part of the comprehensive plan. We've looked at that. The comp plan is now 5 years old. We have another 5 years with it. So we would also rely on that. Some of the statistical information or the data we're looking at would be, let's talk about water, for instance, and also the water company, the Water Commission recently decided that they would do a study of the water to see if they have enough water to service the people going forward, that they are going through that process, which is not unusual, especially when you start seeing as not so much, which I would call growth, but the expansion of people staying on the island longer during the year. So we have that. We also have building permits we can look at. We may look at voter registration to see how many more people are voting here. Maybe we'll tap in with the medical center and say, what are you seeing as far as year-round patients, to start extrapolating that information so we start seeing how many folks are staying here long-term or longer. So and then we also look a little bit with sea level rise impact. What is the potential impact as we go forward with this? So where we think we are with this at this point is we need to collect that data. The data needs to be reviewed, and then a report needs to come back to council. And from that may help the council make some policy decisions, or maybe some ordinance adoptions, or changing, or zoning. And it also may help the water company also adopt different regulations as they go through this. So we thought the best way to go about this is to come up with a working group. And the working group would report back to the council. The working group would not be a public group. We won't look at the working group as somewhere where we have meetings and things like that, because we're just going to spend time grabbing the data and compiling it. And so the working group, we thought, I volunteered Allison for the working group, and Allison volunteered me for the working group. Then we're looking for a town council member, most likely. John brings from the water department. We talked about water and sewer. We figured water, sewer billing and everything piggybacks the water, although there's some septic and stuff like that, but we can always bring a Dylan in if we need to. Jen Brady from the land use and also a planning board member. And then when necessary, we would look to public safety. You know, we'd have Chief Monahan and his staff participate in the meetings. And also another key person that a lot of times we don't think about or hear about is our town engineer, who's is Jim Jeremiah. You folks all know him, I think. And he's been the engineer here, I think upwards of 40 years. So if anyone has seen some of the infrastructure and what has taken place in recent years, over 40 years, it would be Jim Jeremiah. So that's what we're thinking as to move forward with this proposal as it is. I don't have a timeline as of this point as to when I think we would have that data back or have stuff back to the council. I think we need to start just gathering that and working with the work team and seeing where we can go from there. Allison or Sven, do you want to add anything from your perspective? And then we can see if we have any other input from the council.
So yeah, I think exactly what you said, Marianne, like we want to be proactive. We've been hearing some at different meetings, there's been some talk about increased development pressure and and then also with water, you know, potentially the constraints there too, the infrastructure, some limitations. So I think it would be helpful to get, you know, take a look at the data, you know, analyze it, see if there are some trends developing and then come up with some potentially, you know, some options to consider if some conditions need to change to address those trends if they are concerning. So I think just pulling together this working group of key personnel that can help inform a report and identify what's happening on the island. Like Marianne said, the comp plan was adopted 5 years ago. So this might be a good opportunity timing wise to take a look at new data that's since then. And, you know, potentially we do need to report back to the state on implementation in November of this year, how the comp plan implementation is going. And so there may be some opportunities as we take a look at that. If we want to make some amendments potentially to the comp plan in regards to policies that we maybe didn't see then, or that we want to amend, or additional policies based on changing conditions on the island. Specifically to broadband, I don't know how much we really got into that. It's obviously in the comp plan, but there are some new, existing, and upcoming changes that we want to take a look at.
Good,
Just
Sven.
one thing to add for, thank you, Marianne, and thank you, Allison. And I think, Marianne, you took my note and brought it much further, and that's great. The other is there's some research that probably needs to be done. So not just data collection, but for example, I think many people on the council may remember when at Roberge, we did the boat count. And as we were doing a drone level boat count, which was a drone flying over every week and counting how many boats there were in the harbor, et cetera. One, I don't know that we've actually used that information very well and sort of looked at the pressures on New Harbor. But in that process, we also got a lot of pictures around, I'll say everywhere from Killer Donuts to the boat basin and what that parking, roadway, single lane, double, I mean, that whole congestion area. And so maybe there's other research that needs to be done over the next year or two to help inform this group and inform the plan that we don't have, that, you know, some drone flight footage may be really, really valuable. And I just bring that up as an example of work that this group may uncover, which will help the council be smarter and plan better. So just another thought.
Thanks, Sven. Keith Stover.
This is terrific stuff. Thank you, guys. I just had a couple of suggestions. One is along the lines of research. I think it's important to, this is especially related to housing. I think it's important that the community feel we're working on housing and that we look at perhaps whether other small communities have come up with anything innovative that that we haven't tried or haven't thought of, and I think that ranges from studying what it is we need, what it is the community wants, what our capacity is for as a government for trying to help provide that, etc. I know that other islands have things, and Block Island solutions are I think always when they come from the grassroots are the best solutions, but I just think it would be worthwhile to think about what other towns are doing. And apropos of that, I wonder, Allison, whether there are other towns who are doing a different job. I know special use permits is listed in here as one of the things that sort of the growth in those is listed as one of the things, but I wonder whether any other towns are what they're doing in terms of drawing bright lines around zoning ordinances so that you don't have land use offices and land use boards that are asked to pretty consistently make judgment calls on things like special use permits. I don't know. I'm not enough of an expert other than serving on zoning. I don't know what the genesis, where a lot of those come from, or whether the communities are doing doing it differently. And then sort of to Sven's earlier point about the drone footage, et cetera, I do think that traffic planning needs to be a component of our thoughts on this. I know, Marianne, you're doing some stuff. We actually got an email from, I think the town, some town merchant group folks about Chapel Street. But I just think generally speaking, if there's a stone in the shoe, that everybody loves to talk about, it's traffic. And I think we should include that as an essential component of community planning. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. This is great.
Thank you, Keith. Anybody else? I knew I'd find an opportunity to slip it in, but Sven, Marianne, and myself met with Senator Reed today. He was out for the day. And we had a wonderful conversation. A lot of this on here was discussed. It all pretty much that and broadband. But, he's willing to help in all of this. He came, he saw all, they went to the water company, the sewer company, all these organizations that would greatly benefit from this. Senator Reed had a firsthand look at today, and we discussed all of this in depth with him and his staff. So I think as we move forward on this, we have another tool there for maybe grants, information, anything we need. So it's definitely pertinent to what we did today and in the topic of the day. So I certainly appreciate it. Marianne, what do you suggest the next steps?
Andre?
Oh, sorry, Martha. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I couldn't find my way back to where I needed to be. Okay, I'm not yet convinced that broadband is going to be the game changer everybody thinks it's going to be. And we're talking about going from 6 months or 5 months or whatever it is to 9 months. It feels as though the one huge thing out here is everybody just runs to the bright and the shiny, and that's like what's going on downtown or who's got a commercial development and our zoning ordinances have not truly been overhauled since 1989. And that kind of boggles my mind when I look at it. We had some updates on putting everything in compliance with the state land use laws, and there have been pieces here and there that have been changed. But it just feels like we kind of jump at something that happens. I mean, like, and I hate to keep going back to the Willis House, because I understand, this has happened, and I think it's a casualty of COVID, honestly. How it's not that it's happened, it's that how did it happen with nobody seeming to even know it happened, was going on. And that sort of thing just goes on, and then everybody says, that's too bad, and then they, run off to, save the world, and okay, fine, we're losing our streetscape. And I'm not sure anybody even knows what a streetscape is. And that, because I live on the Neck Road, and that there is this progression of houses on the Neck Road that I really am baffled that people don't even begin to understand traditional land uses out here. I don't think anybody wants to. I think they just want to go with what's suburban, and that's how we got in this mess in the first place. But is the ultimate objective here to look at zoning, not just downtown, and not the big houses that are one of the things that I didn't see here. I know we're talking very broadly here. The water kind of controls everything, truly. But I mean, the tax structure out here. We have major commercial. We have some very expensive houses. I grant you that. But we also have places that must make an awful lot of money in the summertime that don't pay any more taxes than some, a big personal residence out here. And that seems a little off kilter. And I'm not sure if anybody's actually, I started actually looking at who paid what in taxes when I got some accusations a little while ago, and I was kind of shocked at what people don't pay and what people do pay on this island, because I just kind of always assumed, everybody pays the same because it's Block Island. And I guess it's whoever protests that they don't have a view on the fact that they do. So I get all this, I understand all this, but I'm just not sure that we're doing forest and trees.
Thank you, Martha. Sven, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just real quickly, I couldn't agree with Martha more. And actually, Marion and I had talked about tax structures, and I think zoning, and Martha and I have talked about zoning needing at least a refreshment and a dusting. I do see, and when we had that goals meeting back whenever it was, I see these as somewhat integrated, but really separate. I mean, I see the development discussion, at least that I was laying out, was much more around infrastructure. How do we go there, both residential, non-residential, but it was really around supply, demand, management. And that's why it's sort of development. I think there needs to be, as a separate subject, again, there's going to be some overlay in the Venn diagram about zoning. And I couldn't agree with Martha more than that. And then on the tax structure, I am way down that road in even a tiering approach and commercial and a lot of ideas. But I think that's a third subject. And I would love to see 3 little groups, or however Marianne and the group wants to handle it, because I think they all should be, just like Marianne said about this idea. Let's find out the data. Let's figure out the research needed. Let's figure it out and really put a plan together, because they're all 3 very important. But I don't think we can put them all in one. Otherwise, nothing will get done, in my opinion.
Thank you, Sven. Keith?
I was just going to say, as with the RIAC conversation, I think Martha said what I wanted to say much more clearly, but I agree with Martha on the zoning piece as well. As to whether it's all of a piece, I don't know, but I raised this special use permit because we've heard a number of them over the last year or two. And you know, to me, when you have a large number of requests for relief from the zoning reg, to me that means there's something happening that the zoning reg is not adequately addressing, or the lines aren't bright enough. So I just wanted to say I couldn't agree more than with what Martha was saying, and I think that needs some attention.
Good. Thank you, Keith. Go ahead, Mark.
I guess whenever you talk future goals, you got to talk about limitations too. You got to keep in mind what our limitations are. Water Street is Water Street is Water Street. That's not going to change. You can't put 10 pounds of flour in a 5-pound bag. So keep that in mind as we go through this process. And down towards the end of that front page, it lists future economic development plan, things to be supported and pursued. I think on that list, undebatably, housing should be added. Maintenance of our buildings before we start thinking about other ideas, whatever they might be. Let's fix what's in place first. It reminds me of when I worked for Nicky Beck in the late 70s when he just built Captain Nick's. Before anything was finished, he was starting something else. I think we have to remember that we have to maintain first before we continue on to something else. And a big issue that it's always been the top of my list is health and safety. Should be included on that list at the end. Because I don't think, I mean, Martha, you talked, Keith, the whole gang has talked about reviewing our zoning. The town's in a little bit of denial when it comes to this issue, because I remember fighting hard back in the late 80s for the upgrades in our zoning. And then to see so many decisions made that discounted that strong, hard fight. And I'll give some examples. When we talk about Weldon's Way, we're our own worst enemy there. 30 years ago, we granted the mopeders a 5-foot variance to get even closer to the street. We're living with that now. We allowed parking in front of the Aldo's restaurant, where even if you're tight as can be to that curb, the back end of your truck or car is still out in the middle of the road. We allowed for a building to be placed on that corner, the sweet shop, which undebatably blocks and causes a safety hazard for vehicular and pedestrian traffic. Go to the Fish Head building, where the fence there makes it so difficult to see oncoming traffic to the east and a potential accident happening there. Go to Sharky's, where you leave the gas station and all of a sudden there's a barrier to your north. These were all decisions that our planning, zoning, and other boards have made. So we've got our own worst enemy there. We have to get out of denial about that too. So I'll leave with just one question, and that's on the subject of strategy on this sheet. I'd like to explain what considering guardrails to manage the development. What do you mean by guardrails?
I'll tell you what my words meant, Mark. If I think about guardrails, they're sort of, what are those rails that are on the side to keep us focused? And you know, you can say it's about ordinances and regulations, but it's really about, hey, if we want to be, how do we make sure that there are barriers and limits to whatever the plan is to keep it in line. Obviously, from a planning point of view, that would be zoning regulations and, you know, square footage, you know, things like that. But I'm really thinking about what are those edges so that it keeps us moving forward, has some flexibility, but what are those guardrails? So that was the intent of that statement.
Those are my concerns, and I'm all for it. So keep that all in mind.
Yep.
Thank you, Mark. Again, moving forward with this plan. Oh, wait. I see 466-5209 attendees. 3 hands are up. I got 466-5209, *6, state your name first and last. Then we'll go to 464-2231 and then Sean McGarry. So go ahead, 5209.
Fine, Andrea, this is Everett Shorey. Two things. First is I did an economic analysis of the tourism business and its effects on the island, which I would be happy to share with this group. Should I send it to Marianne or Allison?
And just vote.
Marianne or Marianne's muted.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I will send that to you first. Second, I would like to reinforce Keith's point about looking at the transportation issues. I know there's been a lot of talk about that, and I think that's a much more complicated topic than it may appear. But it also has to be done within the context of what kind of community do we want, so that some of the earlier traffic studies focused on pedestrian safety, which is a good thing, but included things like flashing lights, and I'm not sure that that's what people want. So figuring out how to look at the traffic issues within the context of the overall set of community issues, I think will be an important planning aspect.
Thank you, Everett.
Thank you.
464. Go ahead. I don't have the rest. 464-2 something. It says talking permitted. I don't have the rest of it. If you could unmute your name for the record, let us know what's on your mind.
This is Kristen Bauman, resident of High Street. And I say that because I speak as a resident tonight, not in my job. If I could ask, I have 3 things, and I list them so that I remember to ask. The first is just for clarification for me and maybe others, on the sheet that was typed up for us, Lark Hotels is the Surf, the Gables 2, a swimming pool, and some employee housing. Is that correct?
Yes.
If someone can confirm that for sure.
Yes.
Okay. And Peregrine is the Narragansett?
There's the boat basin.
Or like historical landmarks that are helpful for people. Is Peregrine the
boat basin?
The what?
The boat basin.
And the boat basin, okay. And then the last one, and my apologies, I don't know if I've ever heard it out loud. Is that Champlin's?
Yes.
Is that correct? Great.
Yes.
So thank you. That's helpful for me. And then secondly, I wanted to say it feels not proactive to me. It feels a little reactionary. And I'm, I understand that comes as the Gables 2 has made headlines the last few weeks, and many people on Dodge Street and around the island are upset about the Gables 2 proposals. And so I've been ruminating about this, and I've been wondering if you are looking at zoning, and if you are looking at the last zoning change that allowed this development in the Old Harbor District, and whether you're thinking about changing that. Like, that would be, is that a step you're willing to make, and is that a direction you're willing to go to sort of halt the presses, save some water, alleviate some congestion and parking and extra people? Are you willing to look at that decision? Or, and it's a question, are we working from where we are today with that zoning change in place? Is that what we're working from? And then third is that just that as we look at this, I know Marianne did a whole list of everyone that this will impact, and I just want to echo that this is about the financial town meeting that we just had. This is what we're talking about for next year. How big are we growing our departments to accommodate the needs of both the residents that are changing and the tourism that is changing. I know that is, that everybody will be impacted, as Marianne said. And so I just want to underscore that these kinds of dollars are going to grow. I don't know if I want to say exponentially, but they're going to grow in ways that maybe not everyone is even thinking of yet as we move forward. So I just want to make sure that everybody gets included in that conversation. I think those are my comments. Thank you for taking them.
Thanks for calling, Kristen. Does anybody want to comment on anything Kristen said, or? Okay.
I'll just say that, we haven't started the discussion as far as anything specific. So we haven't talked about any specific zoning amendments at this point, but I did note what she said in my notes. So we'll see what happens when we get to that discussion, if that is identified as a potential need or solution.
Okay,
Thank you,
just
Allison.
one clarification. Is Kristen still there?
She is, but she's muted.
Yeah.
She's unmuted.
Well, I think she referenced the Gables too. I think she meant the Surfside / Rose Cottage, which is next to John Rose and Company across from the Redbird. I think that's the building she's talking about. And I'm not sure.
Thank you, Martha.
That would be,
So the Gables too is the one that just got painted, and across the street is the one I was referencing. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, the Gables too, I'm pretty sure is the Darius today. I get very confused, which is why I call things John Rose and Company.
Yeah, that could be right.
I think what's going on, or what they're proposing, falls under the old zoning. That hasn't been to zoning planning yet. That's still just floating around in HDC world, which is another whole issue about the order of and precedence of things. Which goes back to my land use statement at the beginning.
Thank you, Martha. Sean McGarry.
Hey, Sean, before you go, can I just jump in and say my sheet should have included waste management and the complications around waste management. So I'll lash myself on the back before you can do it.
Well, I'm going to speak from a different hat.
Oh, well, I did it anyway.
Thank you. I think most importantly, our infrastructure dictates our capacity. We all know that. So we need to figure out a way that we can regulate our capacity based on our infrastructure. Are we willing to expand our infrastructure for an expanded capacity, or are we going to grow together? We can't continue. If we do what we did last year, and we do this continuously, our infrastructure is going to collapse from within. We face the same struggles as restaurants do. We have staffing problems due to housing and these issues. We can only allow so many visitors. I like overnight long-term visitors, but I also like day trippers. So somehow we have to find a way. In the new harbor, it's probably the only place that we can really regulate the visitor traffic, because we can limit the anchorage field. We can eliminate the number of moorings. That's the only control we have. How do we get that same kind of control over the overall traffic that comes here? We don't want to stop people coming here. We just want to make sure that the number of people traveling to Block Island can be accommodated by our infrastructure. And that's my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. I don't see any more questions. Council, have anything on this? So moving forward, we are going to, and I'll let Marianne finish that.
So Alice and I will begin working based on the feedback we also received this evening. And we will keep you folks posted as we begin this project. We'll probably have a good 6, 9, 12 months worth of work to get done. So I think it'll be a while before we come through with the final report or thoughts or comments. So maybe we, after Alice and I have a chance to talk and we start working on this, maybe we'll come back in bite-sized pieces or something, depending on how this all unveils in the coming months.
You, Marianne?
Yes,
somebody?
ahead.
Just the kind of going back to the point I was trying to make earlier, which I don't think I really clearly articulated. I think looking at the real estate ads and the way house rentals are tiered, and looking at social media with Airbnb, and I'm stunned at the number of houses that are, it seems like the range now is some capacity of 12 to 20, and those are not insignificant numbers. And that's a huge, I feel like there's just this huge industry that's going on that nobody's even talking about. Because
you're exactly right, Martha. I agree with you.
Yeah, that's that. And just, I hate to say, look at the other islands, but they're having the same problems.
Yeah, they are. Andre,
Good, Sven.
just building really on Martha's earlier comment. I would, not trying to put more work to Marianne or whatever. I do think we need to have some folks looking at development, obviously, but I do think zoning, the zoning infrastructure really needs to have a look at everything from, mixed use over at High Street to Spring Street to literally all the zoning details that Keith and Martha have talked about. And I think the third thing is taxes. So while we've had a good discussion on development, and Martha, Marianne and Allison will sort of go forward, and a team will be sub-team built. I do think we need to continue discussions on those two other topics, and whether we do that at the next work session or however we do it, I just don't think they can be, I think they should be tackled pretty soon, especially taxes, in my opinion, but zoning's right there. So I just don't want to lose that input that Martha and many others had. Thank you.
Thank you, Sven. Are we through on the topic? Anybody else?
Jess Willie is ready.
I think she is. Number 3, discuss and act on a Block Island Recovery Improvement District. Marianne and I had the opportunity to meet with Jessica Willie from the Tourism Council, the Executive Director of the Tourism Council last week. She's provided some information, which you have in your packet. This is what we're talking about. We found on ClerkBase. With that, I will let Jess take over.
Thanks, Andre.
You're welcome.
So I know you all haven't seen this. This is step 1 in a multi-year long process. Nothing else can happen with this until this first step happens. So basically what I'm looking for is the town council to provide a resolution in support of legislation that would be enabling legislation that would allow the formation of a improvement district on Block Island. You may or may not know that currently the state of Rhode Island does not have a law that allows the town of New Shoreham to have a management district or a district management authority. That is available in some other cities in the state, 3, but it's not available on Block Island. So this legislation that we're talking about tonight is going to could allow some type of management district to even exist, where an assessment would be collected. So different people are doing it different ways across states, things like that. But this is, so tourism improvement districts are something that I've been looking at and studying for quite some time, been following along with, and it's always seemed to me to be a, I don't want to say a no-brainer for Block Island, but it makes a lot of sense to me to implement something like this. So again, this is the first step in a long process. And what I'm here in front of the town council asking for is a resolution in support of this enabling legislation. I do have Representative Filippi is going to sponsor the bill and put the bill in with a resolution from the council. And so you can see in your packet, I know, because I've been looking at this for a few years and it's still rather confusing. What you want to really look at first is the key provisions of the proposed legislation, because it really breaks it down into what exactly this is. And I sent very late today a even more simple sort of resolution that explains really basically what a tourism improvement district does, how it works. And so I can get into that, but basically a tourism improvement district, a tourism recovery and improvement district would assess a fee on businesses that would then have to be used, that fee, to benefit those businesses that pay the assessment. So whether that's just a hotel room, whether that's attractions, restaurants, shops, whatever the decision is to be assessed, those are the people that have to benefit from this. In some places, it's used strictly for marketing. In some places, it's used for things like an airport shuttle. So there's a group of hotels around an airport and their town isn't supporting an airport shuttle. And so this group of hotels gets together, they form this district and they pay for the shuttle. So on Block Island, if this group said, you know, what's really important to us is the visitor center, or is a shuttle, or is downtown improvements with nice trash cans, whatever it might be, if that's what they choose, they want this money used for, then that's what it gets used for. That's really, really broad. And again, this enabling legislation only allows the creation of a district. It doesn't say that we're actually going to create the district. It just says if we can get it together, and we do want to do this, the town does want to do this in partnership, then it's something that we can pursue. There's a lot of questions you're going to have that I can't answer because we can't take the first step. Like, we can't take the second step without taking this step. Because right now, Rhode Island general law doesn't allow for this kind of district. They, you know, a lot of states don't want their cities and towns to have local control over that, the money. You know, it wouldn't go into a general fund. It wouldn't go into a state fund. It can't be touched. Unlike taxes, it's its own pool of money set aside specifically to benefit those businesses that pay the assessment. And whether or not those businesses want to pass that assessment on to their customers, which most of them do, or not, would be up to them. So I'm happy to answer questions, but I'm going to back up again and say one more time that what I'm here to ask for is a resolution in support of this legislation so that we can move this process along. Is the beginning of a multi-year process.
Thank you, Jess. I just had to turn my video off because I was having problems with the internet again. Can anybody hear? You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Sven, you got a question?
Jess, I like this idea very much. I sat in on a couple of tourism meetings, and there was a woman who was from the outside who was, I think, describing this. Is that the same thing?
So Civitas advisors are, they're consultants, and they're really known for this. This is sort of what they do. They're out of California, but they have a New York office, and that's who this process is so complicated for people, and it's not that new. I mean, it's about 10 years old, but it's fairly new. And so Civitas, again, they're consultants, and so that was who was speaking. She's very good, and so the Tourism Council retained Civitas to help craft this enabling legislation, to use their expertise. So and then if this moves forward and this gets passed and we are going to be able to move forward, and the town wants to move forward, and the business district wants to move forward, then we'll re-engage Civitas to help craft the whole district. But yes, that was for a woman from Civitas.
Yeah, and she was very good, and I learned a lot in that meeting, and so therefore I feel like I've got it. I don't know if there are a lot of questions. I'll tell you, she was great, and 15 minutes with the council will probably explain. You really got a feeling for how other communities, whether it's winter communities and different resort, have used this service, and I was very impressed with that. So this is a great program because I sat in on that. But you may, if there are other questions, I thought that was very helpful for me at least. So thank you.
Mark, go ahead. Thanks, Finn.
Yes, did you mention earlier that there were some 2 or 3 other cities or towns in the state that have implemented this? And if so, who are they?
Sure. There's enabling legislation in the state that allows this type of district only in Newport, Providence, and I think it's Woonsocket is the third. And so they may have a business improvement district or something like that, which is something that we couldn't even have if we wanted to here right now. But Newport has implemented a tourism improvement district. They actually call it a tourism marketing district there. But they already had the enabling legislation in place, so they didn't have to they didn't have to take this step that I'm taking now. But they implemented a 3-year tourism improvement district 3 years ago, and they just renewed. They just are going through their renewal process right now because it worked so well, and they're so happy with it that they're renewing it.
So it didn't run into opposition from businesses or the Tourism Council or the Chamber of Commerce?
So in Newport, what they chose to do with their district is only ask for the assessment on their larger hotels, such as hotels with more than 18 rooms in the city of Newport. So I think, Discover Newport doesn't just, the tourism division in Newport handles 9 cities and towns, not just Newport, but they chose to put this assessment in partnership with those. It's 15 hotels. It's actually 14 hotels. And those 14 hotels all bought in, and they like the program so much. They're so happy with it. They've just asked to renew it. In bigger cities, like the state of Massachusetts just went through this. They've actually just got the enabling legislation for their whole state. And then each city and town can decide if they want to put together a district or not. They can just let it lie, or they can do this. That's where you find the more people that are involved, there's always 1 or 2 that aren't happy with it. And that's why it's written into this enabling legislation that you have to have, it's really a group effort. You have to have buy-in from, usually it's 50 or 60% of the people, or else it can't move forward. And it is, it really is, the question is, well, who's the group? Who's, in charge? And it's really a group effort. If all the shopkeepers on Block Island get together and say, we don't want to be a part of this, we don't think that this is going to benefit us, or you can come up with programs that are going to benefit us specifically, we don't want to be part of it, then maybe they're not in it. Maybe it is just hotels, or maybe it's just restaurants. But those are all questions that, as the process runs through, I fully expect to run into opposition. And we would have to work through that and change the rules of the district to make as most people happy as possible.
Thank you, Jess. Keith Stover.
Hey, Jess. I just had a couple questions. And if I didn't read it closely enough, I apologize. But so you get legislation passed that creates this district. Does it create a new board, or does it run through the tourism council, or what's the governance structure?
So it's written into the enabling legislation that you can have whatever governing structure the group decides. best practice, most regions that have done this, there's about 230 in the country right now, and there's hundreds in formation. The majority of them run through the tourism division as an administration. So in other words, I would be an administrator without voting power or anything like that. But and some places would have the same board. It could be the same board as or executive committee as the Tourism Council. I wouldn't think that would work on Block Island, because we have some people on the board that maybe wouldn't have businesses that are being assessed. So we'd create an executive board out of those members who want to be involved, that are in, on those businesses that are being assessed. So if it ends up just being hotels, then the board would be made up of,
Gotcha.
representatives from just those hotels, and it would rotate, and you would set board,
And how does the eligibility work for the group?
Well, again, it depends. So if you have, again, in Newport, there's only 14 of them. There's 14 hotels, so they have a representative or somebody, they have 7. So they rotate, there's 7 people through, whoever has time to do it. They meet quarterly. It's not a huge time commitment. And I should say too, that in Newport, with those 14 hotels, their budget last year was $350,000. And they're just year 3. So they're just sort of building on it now. But all those numbers would be in the district formation. Basically, the district formation writes into the rules who's going to be on that board, how it's going to be, how are you going to vote people on? Are people just going to be, they can volunteer for it if they're part of the assessed business. But the district owner, if you will, would be, well, in this case, it makes the most sense. And again, it's best practice, but it doesn't have to be this way, to be the tourism division. Generally, they have the resources to do this type of thing. They're already involved in marketing and planning and education, and things like that. So if there's lots of places that maybe have a downtown business improvement district or something like that, and that would go through a business group in town. But this is more broad, so it generally runs through something that's set up by state legislature and not, a private entity.
Thank you, Jess.
Yeah,
Anybody?
I've got a question.
Go ahead. Martha, go ahead.
It seems like this is a little backwards. Has there been any kind of, probably not a public forum, given all the restrictions are still under. I mean, do you have any kind of indication on what the buy-in would be on businesses? Or this feels like it should be something, if it's going to go to the assembly, that it should have the support of the people who it's impacting. And I'm not seeing that anywhere here.
Right. So this basically, this is the first step. I guess it's what comes first, the chicken or the egg. I could also go out to the entire business community and find out and get a lot more details, and it probably take 2 years, maybe a year, to really flush this out, form this out, exactly figure out what we want to do. And then we could go to the General Assembly and they could say, we're not even interested in letting you form that district. So it's the forming of the district is a lot more, it's gonna take a really long time. It's gonna take buy-in from everybody. And just because this enabling legislation passes doesn't mean this district is gonna be formed. It just allows you to form the district if you want to. So if this does pass, and then I start going around and saying, hey, what do you all think of this in the business community? And they say, we're not interested in that at all. We don't think that's a good thing for Block Island. And that's just the end of it. It doesn't go anywhere. So yes, it could be, I understand what you're saying, and it could be done that way, but it could be done in conjunction as well. But since I'm one person, this seemed to be the most efficient way to go about it. So I started with Blake and Marianne and Andre, and there's like 6 steps that have to happen all at once. And so I'm just trying to take this first step before the legislation session is over this year.
Okay, I think we just have a philosophical difference on this. I know when the town did both the the land trust and the housing board, very important to going to the assembly was getting the buy-in of particularly the realtors who were impacted, who would have to be cooperating to make this actually work, because it seemed kind of pointless to try to do something unless you knew you had the cooperation to make it exist. I mean, I don't want to be taking something to the assembly and then saying, oh, well, we don't need it, we can't use it because people aren't going to do it. It just doesn't, that's a philosophical difference that we have.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I should say that there is buy-in from the Tourism Council, and that is representatives of sort of 3 or 4 of the largest businesses on the island. So those 7 members have do like this plan and want to move forward with it. But that's just 7.
Mark?
If we use Newport as a template, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you said there's some 14 larger hotels who comprise it, could they use that revenue just to buy billboard space just for their 14?
No, absolutely not. And that's what I'm trying to say is that, some places around the country do use it for straight marketing. But most places, and what I would really hope it was used for on Block Island, is much more of that educational stewardship component that can be missing. There's just simply not enough money to do all the kind of stewardship, signage, wayfinding, capital improvements, things that make it a more hospitable experience as opposed to straight marketing. So for example, in Newport, when they finally had enough money for their first project, it was their first project was a map that showed those 14 properties. So it was a map of Newport. It specifically called out those 14 properties, and it was placed in the visitor center. And when people came and asked for a map, they got the special map, and maybe it had coupons on it or whatever. So it was specific to those 14 properties. It was wayfinding. And it's, again, maybe those 14 people say, you know what, we want a billboard, but most likely not. Those 14 people are going to be doing something that's going to, more impact as a whole their program.
That's what I would like to see done.
And I, I wouldn't use Newport necessarily as an example. They were very constricted by the current Rhode Island general law that allows them to have the formation that they do. It's a very limited, where this enabling legislation is much more broad. It covers a lot of different things that you can choose to put in or not. And whatever's going to work best for Block Island would be where this district formation would go. My favorite example of a tourism improvement district is Mammoth Lakes. And Mammoth Lakes is where Mammoth Ski Area is. And they have very similar concerns and issues that Block Island do, as far as massive amounts of people in the winter, and only, I think they have 9,000 year-round residents. And all those problems you just talked about in the last segment with, water supply and streets and, how people act when they get there, are all things that they use this money for. It's more for stewardship than for straight advertising. And that's what I would like to see it used for too. Now, that wouldn't be up to me. It would be up to the group that's being assessed to decide how they want it to be spent.
Go ahead, Sven.
You're muted, Sven.
Sorry. Just say it's a couple of hotels. They wanted to do something very those hotel based, right? And it sort of flew in the face. Is there any kind of governance of this group, whether it goes through the tourism council or through the town council? I mean, I don't mean this in a weird way, but suddenly the marinas are forming this group. And next thing you know, it's a whole marina thing that really sort of flies in the face of what tourism council is doing. Like, what's sort of the oversight of this effort?
So, I totally get what you're saying there. The way the district is written, so after this initial step, then once it's written, it can be, it could be written in such a way that says, all, I don't want to say get approval, but
be in concert with or something.
it could be written in such a way that,
I mean, we have two cases of major businesses on the island that sometimes do things that may not be in alignment with what others feel. And I could suddenly see, I don't know, right?
So that's why this is definitely a group effort. This is something that if there's 14 businesses and there's 2 businesses that say we want to do this, but the other 12 say they don't, then it doesn't pass. You have to have, this is a total consensus type thing. And that again, I would like to see it be on more than just hotels. I think hotels are already overburdened with their taxes, and this is not a tax; it's an assessment, and it's used to benefit just those people who pay in. That's a big difference. But I'd like to see it on more, because the more buy-in you get, the more community support. This is it's a partnership. It's a partnership between the business community and the town, and has everybody sort of rowing in the same direction, ideally.
Thank you.
And there are, if you look at the key provisions, there's, it has governance on there, but also it has disestablishment. So if the town council is like, this is not working, this is not what we want, we don't like this, you can absolutely disestablish the tourism improvement district.
Thanks, Jess. Can you talk about, when we discussed this in Marion's office, about how the tax was collected, the assessment was collected? It goes through the town and.
Well, again, that can be written into the district plan. Different people do it different ways. A lot of towns, including Newport, have the town tax collector be the collection agent. And then they pay the town collection agent a 3% fee to do that. And they do that for a couple different reasons, but one of them is to really give the town a hand in this, to some money in it, because if the town said, we don't want to collect it, we want to stay out of it fiscally, financially, then the town wouldn't see any money at all from this tourism improvement district. But this would be a way for the tax assessor's office to bring in an extra 10 or 15, whatever percentages. It's around $10,000 in Newport a year for their office. So the check is made out from the assessed business. Let's say it's the Newport Marriott, and the Newport Marriott writes their check to the Newport Tourism Marketing District, and it's sent to the town of the city of Newport. They collect the check, they keep a little balance sheet, and they deposit the check into the marketing district's bank account. Marketing district's making all the decisions and everything like that. In exchange for that, they get 3%. Now they again, in Newport, everybody's written differently, but you can, there's penalties and interest charges. So Marianne's question when we met was, well, who's gonna, make sure people are paying, and who's gonna, assess the penalties, and, so again, that's all written, that can all be figured out. That's all written to everybody's satisfaction when the district's formed. But like in Newport, Evan was saying that, they have these 14 hotels, and they all want to do this. This is something they want to do. So they're all paying. And if for some reason they don't pay 1 month, he just calls them up and he says, hey, why don't you pay? What's going on? Are you unhappy with it? And if they say they're unhappy with it and they don't pay, then they don't participate in the programs anymore. You know, they're not part of it. So again, it's only 14 properties he's dealing with there. You know, the whole state of California is a tourism improvement district. So they have a lot more people to deal with, but they have that all, you know, it's a much more evolved system there.
Can I ask one more question, Andre? Sorry. How does this blend, Jess, in your mind with the chamber? It's sounding very business oriented, chamber geared, segment focused, or potentially segment focused. I mean, can you help?
Sure. So this is an assessment that has to be passed by, you know, put on by the town. It's a governance thing. And the chamber's a private, you know, organization. So the chamber can't form this kind of program at this time. So, I mean, obviously we'd hope that business members who happen to be members of the chamber would, you know, get on board with this. And at the time when the district is forming, you know, they can help us with outreach to the business community, I'm sure. But it's not overlap in the sort of administration or management of the district. In other words, there obviously will be chamber members who would be on the board because those are the businesses that are being assessed. Or I don't want to call it a board, but on the board.
Anybody?
Yeah,
Anybody
yeah.
else have any questions?
I have something. I have not a question exactly. It's just my usual adverse reaction to creating yet another governmental structure. And if there are groups that want to do something, they can do it without having all of these layers and legislation. And if a bunch of businesses want to get together and do something, they can do it. I don't see the net value in this other than it's more bureaucracy as far as I can read this thing. And I understand the net objective, but I guess I'm really getting to be kind of like old school. Why can't people just work together if they want to do something, instead of having to have it all structured for them and take a few years to make it happen? And if a bunch of businesses want to do something, have at it, do it.
Adding on to that, maybe just as you think about your response, I'm sort of with Martha a little bit, and I think Andre's talked a lot about Dodge Street and how many of the retailers and Darius and a few others have really sort of formed together and created pretty cool environments at times, right? And Tuesday night and all that. I mean, is that sort
Thursday.
of what? What is it? Sorry,
Thursday night.
Thursday night, whatever. I mean, that seems to be an example a little bit where, I mean, they could all of them charge an extra $1 per item or $1 for something and pool that money together, right? So is that an example? Is Dodge Street sort of an example of this in a very simple, local way?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yes. And if that group of businesses wants to get together and charge an extra $5 for something, and then they want to use that $5 for something that's going to benefit all of them, they want to get together and do it, then they can do that. Generally we're thinking more along the lines of, like I said, maybe the visitor center or maybe a shuttle, things that the town maybe doesn't want to come up with the $50,000 a year for. Maybe more downtown Old Harbor improvements, things that there just doesn't, even though there's so many tourism taxes coming in to the town, over $1 million a year, there doesn't ever seem to be enough to really focus on those specific tourism, improvements like
trash
cans and bathrooms, and wayfinding is a huge one. We're sorely lacking in wayfinding. People helping people find out where they want to go, more staff for the visitor area, service officers, all those things that we've talked about for years. And this, again, in some places it is purely tourism or marketing. And I think that's why tourism divisions tend to take this on. It makes the most sense because it has to be outside of the town, but it has to still be a sort of quasi governmental group that does it. And for me personally, like, this is if everybody's like, no, we don't want to do this, this sounds like a terrible idea to me, then that's fine. It would actually make my job a lot easier. But again, I go to a lot of conferences, and to me, it seems like a solution to a lot of the problems that Block Island has run into over the last few years, specifically that deal with tourism and what the issues that come with tourism.
Counselors, any other questions? 464-2231, Kristen Bauman. Are you unmuted? I think you're unmuted. Do you have a comment? Or is your hands up from last time? You're muted. You're unmuted.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. My hand's been up for a while. I think my question has been answered, and I think Jess just wrapped it up nicely, so I hate to go now. But my question was about that, Jess, you do not see this as direct conflict to the prior discussion about infrastructure and, right, like you're talking about stewardship and education. And if I could, I want to throw in sidewalk cleaner. This could buy a sidewalk cleaner. We could have no gum on our sidewalks. So just to be clear, like that is the direction you see it going in. And I think that is why, the council may advocate for this at the state level, because it does need a little oversight. And we do want to have, not a runaway organization. And just, if I could just say that.
Yeah, Kristen, that's definitely how I see it and how I would want it to be used for. We had this great idea a few years ago about a downtown concierge. It's just somebody that was hired by the town to walk around downtown and clean the garbage cans and clean the streets and whatnot. And but there's just not money for that. Or I shouldn't say that. It hasn't been prioritized, and this is a money that is, could go for something like that. Again, if that group decided that that's how they wanted to spend it, and it was, communicated in a way that's, this money has to directly benefit those people that are assessed. And those people that are assessed may say, it would benefit us really the most is to have the best visitor center and the best, cleanest streets and the, whatnot, better wayfinding, whatever it is. And again, that can all be written into the district plan. I mean, this is just legislation to allow this to form. It's one step, and it might not go anywhere beyond this, and it might not even go to this. So that's, to answer that.
Thanks. Anybody, council, how do you want to move forward? Do you want to move forward? More discussion?
We have to put a resolution on our agenda now, so people can see it.
Yeah, we have a discuss and act on the district. discuss an act, the act I think would be to either say yes or no this evening, move forward, get more information. Listen to Civitas. I mean, I don't know. How do you want to proceed?
I'd like some time to look at either some case studies, or if Jess could send us, or Civitas could send us some of the websites of some of these improvement districts. That'd be wonderful. I'd like to read about them and see how they work, how they're governed, that sort of thing.
Good.
Yeah, I agree with Keith. I mean, I was intrigued with the idea, as I said, when Civitas, I sat in on that meeting with Civitas. I was intrigued with the idea and the concept. I'm having sort of trouble separating out the Dodge Street example and then also the chamber, because this sort of seems to overlap a lot. So I just got to figure it out in my mind how this is. I just got to figure it out in my mind. So maybe the examples would help.
Okay.
I want to know this local buy-in from the businesses, from the chamber, from everybody. This kind of just came to us. I don't even know what do we even have? Do we even have a letter from tourism? Or did that come in late?
Yeah, there's no letter from tourism. There's I put a sample resolution together that, says that
Well,
they
tourism, I
supported
guess the
this.
question is tourism has acted on this?
Yes. They had to approve the funds to hire Civitas to write the improvement law. And I did have, Julie Fuller was here tonight, but I think she got lost somewhere in the RIAC conversation about an hour and a half in.
That's unfortunate.
How could that happen?
Well, that speaks to how level of engagement.
All right. So, Jess, you got continue the discussion then? Not continue it officially, but we will continue this discussion.
I just want to say, obviously, that's totally what's going to happen. That's fine. We were trying to get this legislation in for this session because, again, this is a very long process. So probably it won't get in now, and because I have to be in the next, 2 weeks. So that's fine, but there would be no hurry now. So this would be pushed almost, 6-7 months until, or 6 months until Rhode Island legislature is back in session. So just so everybody's aware of that. The other thing is I'm happy to send case studies, and I can send a link to our Zoom meeting when Civitas came and presented. But I can't get Civitas to come and talk to you without paying them a lot more money. And we're already out quite a bit, that eventually will get paid back if the district is formed in a few years. So, but I'll send, certainly send case studies and the link to that, our council meeting when Civitas presented.
Okay, I just want to just get clarification again. So the only people who are on board with this right now is the Chamber of Commerce. I'm sorry, not the Chamber of Commerce, the Tourism Council. Is that correct?
Well, Representative Filippi's on board. And I spoke to Marianne and Andre, who were nice enough to put it on the agenda. So that isn't, I know, confirmation of anything, but yes, that's correct, Martha.
Okay, thanks. That's all I was asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Mark?
Yes, when you said you sent us a proposal resolution, is that
at like 6:59 tonight, like 1 minute before the meeting.
Oh, okay. I'll have to
Yeah.
look that up.
Yeah, I was working on it today, and I thought to myself, as I was getting all my stuff together for this, I said I should probably draft that just in case everybody thinks this is such a good idea. They want to sign it right now. So I crafted it up and I sent it over. I took it from, again, a couple different regions and a couple different things, so you could see it.
Jess, I appreciate your work on that. I think we all do. But obviously we didn't, we just need some more information on it. I think, is there anything else the council would like to ask of Jessica Willie on this topic?
You could send that link to that Civitas to all of us. That would be helpful. To Mary Ann or however. That was a good.
Clerk,
meeting.
send it to the clerk. It's best.
Yeah.
For distribution. Okay. 466-5948. I see you got a hand up and you're muted, *6, and identify yourself, first and last name, and let us know what's on your mind.
Hi, Andre and everybody. It's Julie Fuller calling. I've been listening on YouTube and it took me a minute to dial in, so.
That's all right.
So I'm sorry if I'm a little late to the table, but I have been listening, and I just kind of wanted to, I didn't really even realize this was going to be on the agenda tonight, and that's probably why you don't have a lot of the Tourism Council on here, but, just wanted to say that we did all have that meeting. Sven, you're right, I think you listened in on it. It was very informative, and it's very confusing along the way. I know I've sat in on a couple meetings now, but this is really just an entry level. This is like the first step, and there's so much we need to learn. There's so much we need to develop, and I feel like it's an opportunity for us to maybe, as Jess has said, find another source of revenue to help with the things that we all want to accomplish out here, that how the island is impacted by tourism, and how can we help to support that without, always coming back to the town council with an open hand for a visitor center or bathrooms or whatever it may be. So I think I would hope that you would consider helping push this a little bit further, just so we have the opportunity to explore what, if it can even work for our community.
Thank you, Julie. I think we're doing that by gathering more information. I don't want to walk into it. It seems like a huge thing. So we're on it, I think. We've asked for more information, and we'll move forward from there. I guess.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you calling in. I appreciate Jess presenting this to us. Appreciate that. Anybody else? Anybody else? All right, Jess, thanks again. And number 4 on the agenda is mask policy.
If the council remembers, at the last council meeting, we discussed the policies that were in effect that date back to last June. One had some options in it that sunset just by the nature of the policy, because of the fact that they were dates driven. And then the mask policy, as we knew, was sunset. And the council asked me to come up with a policy for the town workers, town employees, as well as town buildings, based on the fact that you would prefer that at this point that masks still be required in town buildings and also with employees. So that's what, and you asked me to come back to the council for endorsement. So what I did was I did draft a very basic brief policy in that regard. Basically, town hall, which we did open yesterday, so we do have folks that are coming in, that all town buildings, town hall, library, DPW, police, fire station, Fred Benson Beach Pavilion, that everyone wear a face covering mask, except for obviously children under 2 and those with physical and developmental disabilities that prevent them from doing that. When working outdoors, town employees are not required to wear a mask. The recreation department, we put in there that the summer camps that they have, that will be starting relatively soon, that they follow the policies that are directed from state agencies. Rhode Island Department of Health and Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management has been weighing in on these, and they've been changing on a continual basis. I think the latest was last night when they eliminate face masks for outdoor sporting stuff. And finally, as far as visitors to the playgrounds and to Heinz Field, again, I'm putting in the policy that they follow what the Rhode Island Department of Health is requiring in that area. The reason why with recreation and the visiting of the playgrounds to follow Department of Health, they're knowledgeable in that area, and it gives someone, if they change things as they go along, it gives folks the opportunity to change with what's going on in our recreational fields, and also with our summer camps. And that's all I have to say about this.
Thank you, Marianne. I was having internet issues again, so I turned the video off. Counselors, do you have any questions on this?
Andre?
Go ahead, Sven.
Yeah, Marianne, right now, we said that we were going to go with the state, right? And then the question was in town hall or in town facility, excuse me, you put the policy in place, right? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, and just, I'm just clarifying here for me. Are 3 and 4 trying to be more, bullets 3 and 4, trying to be more specific? Because I mean, you sort of say, hey, we're going to follow recreation, but that falls within the state under summer camps, or we're going to follow playground and high seal, but that falls within the state. I'm just wondering if there was a reason to say those two, because I thought we were under the state anyway. But maybe these are a bit more specific to those quote unquote locations. I'm just trying to.
It's mainly for clarification purposes.
Redundancy is not bad either.
So that it's in the policy.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
I said redundancy is not bad either. I mean, it defines it a little bit further. So I'm just making sure. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody from the public have any comments?
Is there a review time for this, or is it going to be when the manager sort of, I mean, in other words, things are changing so darn fast.
My gut tells me you'll probably be hearing from me sooner than later.
Perfect.
Based on what I'm seeing, what's going on. So.
Thank you, Marianne. Anybody else? Hearing none, seeing none. Martha?
No, I have no questions.
No questions? Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Do we need to give consent or not? It's a question. I don't see any need to, but I'm just asking.
I don't think so.
Good.
It's
Second your motion.
Motion was made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? Sven?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Keith?
Yes.
All right, and Martha Ball?
Aye.
Motion carries. Everybody have a great night. We'll see you next Monday.
Take care, everybody.
Monday by Zoom and then 16th by person, right?
Well, the webcam's been ordered, but and we got to check it out. So hopefully, because we still have to do the Zoom, the executive order will still be in effect. From what I'm hearing, it will be in effect until the end of June. So we still have to have the opportunity to vote, folks participate virtually.
Thank you, Marianne. Appreciate it. Oh, Sean McGarry, hold on. We got a question. Motion to adjourn. Go ahead, Sean.
Can we adjourn? Oh.
Go ahead, Sean.
Sean, where are you?
Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead.
I'm here. They just unmuted me. So my hope is that you'll continue this virtual meeting even into in-person meetings. I mean, we talked about it, what it does for community involvement, and I think you got to work on a way to keep this going. I mean, it really creates a lot of involvement. So that's my thought.
Thanks, Sean. And there's also legislation.
That's the objective.
And there's legislation pending that would actually embody what you just said. And we're waiting to hear if that passes or whatnot. And, so that's where we're at. Everybody good?
Can I hang up now?
Thank you, clerks. Much appreciated. Thank you. Have a great night.